Good morning. Happy Halloween. It is October 31st. This is the Education and Culture Committee. I'm joined by my colleague, Councilmember Albernaz. Councilmember Mink, who's the third member of this committee, will be joining virtually soon, and so we'll welcome her when she arrives. Today, it is Halloween, so it's very apropos and appropriate that we have our own set of superheroes here for education that are going to be talking to us about what's going on in the schools and what the needs are, what the opportunities, what's going right, what we need to improve on. I am really, really excited. We're going to hear first from our students, then we're going to let them go back to school, but also from our staff, our educators, community advocates. This is my 6th year on this committee, and I've often thought, and a lot of us on the council have talked, and we've worked really hard about how do we get more people from different groups involved and engaged with the work of the council, and not just hear from the regular folks that we always hear from. And so this is really an exciting moment for me and for the committee and for the council to have the opportunity to do that on an issue that's comprises just under half of our budget, and so, and 160,000 of our students, many more family members and community members, and obviously 25,000 staff. So really excited to be here today. We're first going to hear from our students, and I'm going to tee that up, and then we're going to, just as far as how this will go, we're going to hear from our students, and we have representatives, and I'm going to ask you each to introduce yourselves when you give your remarks. Then we're going to hear from community groups, and our union partners, and then our independent schools, and then at the end we're going to take up a couple of special appropriations as well. So we've got a full day, but we're really excited about it. So with that, Councilman Arnold, has anything to add? Okay, so we're going to jump in and start with our student members. I'm going to start with our youngest member, and so please introduce yourself and say where you are from and give your testimony.
Hello everybody, my name is Nathan Enderful and I am from Maryland, America.
What school?
Flower Hill Elementary School.
What grade are you in?
In the 5th grade, and I've been a proud student at Flower Hill since kindergarten, and I'm also an active member of my church. One of my favorite parts of being in school is enjoying lunch and recess with my friends, and we also love to play Foursquare and just have fun with each other. It's a great time to relax and enjoy each other's company. Flower Hill, every student has the opportunity to get lunch for free, and I believe that lunch is very important because the food helps us also focus in class. When our stomachs are full, we can learn better. I think all students should have the same benefit we have, and I believe that free lunch should be available in every school. It's essential for helping students all succeed. At Flower Hill, if we ever have a problem or need to speak up about something, we can go to our principal, our assistant principal, or our restorative justice coach, Ms. Niemeyer. For example, if you have an issue with another student, Ms. Niemeyer will sit you both down and help you solve the problem. We need more schools to have somebody like Ms. Niemeyer. Having a restorative justice coach can really help students learn how to resolve conflicts and work peacefully. Lastly, I want to share one more thing that could be improved in our schools. Ever since we had to switch to Zoom for learning, some students have gotten used to the consequences for their actions. I believe that we need to rethink and update the consequences for students. This way, we can help everyone understand the importance of responsibility and making the right choices. Thank you for listening to me today. I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts, and I hope you will consider what I have said. Together, we can make our schools better for everyone. Thank you.
Good morning, council members. My name is Ella Wan, and I'm an 8th grader at Nielsen Middle School and the president of the Montgomery County Junior Council. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak with you today about the student experience in MCPS. As a student myself, I've seen firsthand the many positive aspects of our schools and community, as well as areas where improvement can help us be even better. Let me begin by highlighting the many strengths of MCPS. MCPS has been consistently ranked as one of Maryland's most diverse school systems. This kind of diversity has taught us the importance of empathy and understanding, skills vital for life beyond the classroom. MCPS also offers a wide range of extracurricular activities, from sports to clubs and academic teams, allowing students to explore their interests and develop leadership skills. The emphasis on college and career readiness, with access to AP and IB courses, internships, and technical training programs, is another huge benefit that sets us up for success after graduation. However, as with any system, there are areas where we can improve to better meet the needs of all students. One challenge many students face is the growing pressure and stress from academic demands. While it's important to challenge students, the balance between academic rigor and mental health support needs to be more carefully considered. Increased access to mental health resources, such as school counselors or wellness programs, can make a significant difference in helping students manage stress and anxiety. Another area for improvement is equity and access to opportunities. While many schools in MCPS have incredible resources, others are still struggling with overcrowded classrooms, outdated facilities, and a lack of extracurricular options. Ensuring that every student, regardless of their zip code, has access to the same high-quality education and opportunities is crucial. Additional funding for under-resourced schools, more equitable distribution of technology, and after-school programs for all can help bridge this gap. Finally, a critical area of concern is our school infrastructure. Many of our school buildings are aging and in need of significant repairs, particularly in terms of HVAC systems. It's not uncommon for classrooms to be uncomfortably hot in the summer and freezing in the winter, which can make it difficult for students to focus and learn effectively. As an example, just this year, my school was replaced with a brand new building. We went from a 43-year-old crumbling building with a lack of space, cleanliness, and working HVAC systems to a spacious and modernized facility. This change has drastically improved our school spirit and learning abilities. Our experience at Neilsville proves how investing in better infrastructure, upgrading classrooms, and ensuring all schools are equipped with proper heating, cooling, and ventilation will create a more conducive environment for learning. As we continue to work towards educational equity, providing every student with safe, comfortable, and well-maintained school facilities should be a priority. MCPS has provided students like myself with many great opportunities, but there is always room for improvement. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I hope we can work together to make these positive changes a reality for all students in Montgomery County.
Thank you, Ms. Wan. Ms. Watts.
Good morning, County Council members. My name is Madison Watts, and I'm a senior at Rockville High School. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak and reflect on the student experience. As the first vice president of the Maryland Association of Student Councils, or MASC, and the workshops director of the Montgomery County Regional Student Government Association, or MCRSGA, I feel that I am well equipped to comment on the student experience. So firstly, I would like to speak on the positives of the student experience. Over the past couple of years, I have observed noteworthy efforts from MCPS to bounce back from the COVID-19 pandemic, fostering increased connections between students. So whether it's football games, club meetings at lunch, pep rallies, or fundraisers, I see amicable and close-knit communities being formed. In addition to increased student social interactions, I genuinely feel that MCPS prepares students for the future through educational programs and college and career readiness achievements. While endeavors aimed at college and career readiness could always be improved upon, I would like to acknowledge the major efforts that MCPS has implemented, especially targeted at high school students, to ensure knowledge of opportunities and the transformation of student desires into realities. The final positive that I would like to highlight is the surge in the emphasis of hiring educators from diverse backgrounds, incorporating content that reflects students, celebrating cultural events, and considering all perspectives in MCPS while valuing our diverse makeup. In organizations like MCRSGA, diversity and inclusion are guiding pillars, so noticing the increased attention towards DEI efforts gives me much hope. However, while MCPS has strengths in many spheres, there are noteworthy limitations that could be improved upon to better student experiences. A recent weight on many MCPS students and families have been school safety concerns. At Rockville High School last school year, there was a reported bomb threat. It took hours for the administration to communicate with students. There was major disorganization, and the lack of a streamlined approach to deal with the conflict resulted in even more missed educational time. Unfortunately, school safety concerns reach far past Rockville High School. The absence of proactive safety measures, such as clear reporting systems, further contributes to this atmosphere of unease. In an attempt to reduce safety concerns, MCPS implemented an ID system, which many students find inconsistent and ineffective. Another one of the most pressing issues for students today is the need for improved mental health resources. Developing such programs and counseling resources only addresses half of the issue. In order for these supports to be effective, students must know about them. Lastly, infrastructure is another area needing attention. Many of our school facilities are aging and inadequate for the needs of a modern educational environment. Classrooms should be safe, inviting, and equipped with the necessary resources. In conclusion, I am grateful for the positive aspects of our school environment, which play a crucial role in shaping our experiences as students. By addressing limitations and investing in improved resources, we can create an even more enriching educational environment, contributing to better student experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Watts. Well, I want to thank each one of you for, and I'm going to say your names again, Nathan, Madison, and Ella. Let's give them a round of applause for what they did today. I'm blown away by your ability to clearly and articulately say what you think you should be seeing in the schools. You know, I know when I was at, you're fifth grade? Yes. Eighth grade? And 12th grade? Yeah, none of those grades. I couldn't have done it. So, just really proud. I think it's a testament to not only you and your families, but the school system. And you sent us a whole bunch of stuff in addition to your actual presentation today of things that you want to make sure that we're looking into. And so we have that, and that's included in the packet. So we want to thank you for that. I want to thank your parents who are here. I know there's some parents in the audience. You must be very proud. And I also want to thank Sheila Cherry. Is Miss Cherry here? Who is like the awesome student organizing person extraordinaire. But her official title is Director of Student Leadership and Extracurricular Activities at MCPS. So thank you for all that you've done. Before we let you go, I just wanted to, is there anything, because this happens sometimes to me, as you heard your other classmates or other schoolmates, is there anything that you didn't say that wasn't in your prepared remarks that you want to make sure that the Education and Culture Committee from Montgomery County keeps in mind before you leave us about the school system? Or did you get it all in your remarks? We got it all. Okay. All right. Gabe, anything you want to say before they go?
Real quick.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, so I was a communications major in college, and they taught me how to give presentations. I would give each of you an A+. That was outstanding. So in your delivery, in your confidence, in the manner in which you presented both opportunities, but also weren't afraid to address challenges and speaking in the first person, it is immensely powerful for us as policymakers to hear from you. And we know that you are speaking on behalf of over 100,000 students in MCPS. And so I just want to, as a parent myself of 4 kids, and Councilmember Jawando also has 4 kids, we're both proud MCPS parents. This gives me a ray of sunshine in what feels like pretty dark times these days. And this helps ground us and affirm why we do this work is because of you. So thank you for your leadership. I agreed with everything that you said, and we look forward to following up on all of them. Thank you guys so much.
Here. Thank you very much. We'll move to our next panel, and have a good day at school. Hopefully you get a pass. So next, I think up, we're going to have is our PTA, Miss Bridget Howe from the Montgomery County Council of PTAs, MCC PTA. Diego, I think, are you a part of this panel too? And Wylea and Byron Johns from the Black and Brown Coalition, or whoever's here to represent. And then I think, are we doing the others next, or are they all coming up now? The unions can come up for this one? Okay, and then bring the unions up. Okay, great. So we'll start with that. All right, good morning. Thank you for being here. I think you all have some remarks you'll make, and then we'll have a dialogue. So we'll start with you, Bridget.
Awesome. Thank you so much. First of all, Thank you for putting the students on first. Their voice should always be elevated in these conversations, but I will say they're really hard to follow. So, and Gabe, now that I know that you are Councilmember Albornoz, now that I know you're grading us, I'm a little more nervous than I would have been otherwise.
Exactly.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bridget Howe, and I'm delighted to be the current president for Montgomery County Council of PTAs, which is known as MCC PTA for short. We're the largest parent advocacy nonprofit in the state of Maryland, with over 50,000 members representing nearly 200 PTAs, parent-teacher associations, and PTSAs, parent-teacher-student associations. PTA's mission is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. And while our formal priorities won't be adopted until late November, we're always advocating. And we do this through a variety of strategies and tactics. These include our network of committees, which bring together passionate families and caregivers to dig in deeply on issues that are important but might be too in the weeds for our formal advocacy process. These could include things like exploring curricula, creating a format for community engagement in schools with construction projects, our school construction impact teams, looking at bell times, advocating for safe routes to school, Title I and focus schools, and more. We also inform and empower our local PTAs to advocate for issues that are specifically relevant to their community's needs. We organize cluster-wide testimony for both the capital and operating budgets and educate cluster representatives, not only what is included in those budgets, but how they can better advocate for their needs. And we also work in collaboration and partnership with other organizations that represent family interests, and also the staff associations and MCPS staff when we have common interests. As I mentioned, we've not ratified our MCC PTA advocacy priorities for FY25 yet, but issues that consistently rise to the top for us are safety and security for all students, with attention paid to hate bias incidents, a return to strong academics with strategies that prioritize and focus on addressing the gap for Black and Brown students, responsible stewardship of the MCPS budget with data-informed accountability and transparency. And finally, we believe in responsible and thoughtful investment in MCPS facilities and maintenance to ensure that all students are in facilities that support their needs. And I'll stop there and wait for the dialogue.
Thank you so much, Ms. Howe. Diego?
Okay, thank you, County Council members. An honor and a pleasure to be here with everyone. When we think about MCPS and the challenges and opportunities it is facing, we have to start by what we think is the most important issue. And it's an issue of transparency. The truth is that the majority of our constituents, particularly Black and Brown, do not know what the real situation is for the county as a whole, so for MCPS as a whole, but particularly for the students. So if we're not transparent about the state of MCPS and the state of our children and their education, we cannot move forward. And this hasn't been the case for decades and decades. Once we understand where we are and we all agree that we are in trouble, basically, we would very much welcome the superintendent and MCPS to come up with a plan, a vision moving forward, because things are bad. Things have not changed for a long time. Things are worse. Black and Brown students are worse off today than they were decades ago. And in the process, we invested millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, and we have not seen the change. It is our perception that no one has come with a long-term plan and said it's going to take this to get us out of where we are. And that will entail sacrifices. And MCPS should be the first one to start to say what they're going to be doing differently in order for them ask us to follow suit. It has been our experience and the world's experience that people don't shy away of change and sacrifices, but they need to understand what the purpose of that is. That, from our perspective, has never been uttered. And again, we're willing, and I believe the community and the council and the board and all of my colleagues here are willing to sacrifice, but not without a vision, not without a plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Mr. Johnson.
I want to keep it at a broad commentary level and then welcome your questions on this. The Black and Brown Coalition, again, was formed a little before the pandemic and really in light of, so I want to kind of put away one of the things that has often been said is things have gotten worse or things are in the state that they're in because of the pandemic. they were not well before the pandemic. And it should be alarming to everyone, all the millions watching right now, that half of our kids, literally half of our kids, are not reading at their grade level for a district that is $3.3 billion in size, the largest in Maryland. And for all the efforts that the county council and the school district have put forward, that has not changed. And over the last 3 years, I would say the council has been very forthcoming with probably close to $400 million of additional funds to make sure we had teachers who were properly compensated, we had administrators that were properly supported. But one of the things that's got to be a priority is that all of our kids need to be taught and to learn and become proficient at readers. It just changes the trajectory of their futures. And that is really in a growing, just the demographics of this county, it is an absolute imperative for the financial viability and economic future of this county that we get this solved. So while I would say, no, this is a preparation for the budget conversations coming up, budget alone is not enough. It has to be a priority. And that is the biggest message I want to convey now, is that addressing the fact that half of our kids, and even more than half in math, are not on their grade level at every grade. Those are two priorities. Those are core mission for the school systems, and that we have to address that in addition to the right level of resources going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chase.
Thank you. So I'm Wylia Chase, the Director of Operations and Community Engagement for the Black and Brown Coalition for Educational Equity and Excellence. Thank you for having us. So just want to follow up on my colleague. So you've heard our priorities, our organizational priorities, right? We advocate for Black and Brown, for all students in Montgomery County Public Schools, Black and Brown in particular. And so we want people to be alarmed at the dismal data for our Black and Brown students, especially who are the majority demographic in our school system, and really aren't being tended to as if they are, right? And so we know that they're capable. However, if you don't have the access, and if our parents don't know, right, then we're at a loss. And so those things really need to be tended to. Those are our priorities, and they're in alignment with the blueprint, quite frankly. And so we're asking for MCPS's support, and our role in that as trusted community stakeholders here in Montgomery County is to work in collaboration and partnership, but we're clear that our constituents and who we advocate for and with are Black and Brown students and their families. And so thank you for having us here today to have this discussion.
Great. So you'll keep me on time as much as possible. So we have some time to go back and forth here. I'll start, and Gabe, you'll chime in. I'll ask a couple. Appreciate you being here, all your advocacy in the community. I know you had the Black and Brown Coalition had a great event recently. I recently was on with some of your MCC PTA members. So there's various levels of organizing and conversation happening. I don't think anyone in the room, anyone in the county would disagree with anything you said as far as we want our kids to be proficient in math and reading. We particularly want our students of color, low-income students to have access and to not have those widening opportunity gaps. The question is, and I get the point about there needs to be a robust plan to get that. I think when we hear from the school system, which we do a lot in this committee, we hear a lot about the plans to do those things. Their core focus is on math and reading for students, in addition to all the other things you heard our students talk about, mental health facilities that help undergird those things happening, right? But the core focus is math and reading. Talk to me about, there was also an undertone in what you said, or not even just an undertone, around effective use of resources. So I think all of you talked about that. Again, something I think everyone would agree with. But talk to me about, be a little more specific about what you think is missing in either the plan or the driver, because there have been plans. I mean, there's a new reading curriculum. There's math tutor. There have been things that have moved forward. It hasn't done what we've wanted. We're going to hear from our educators and folks soon. I say this a lot, 90% of MCPS is staffing. Okay, so when you talk about that big budget, 2.8 billion of it is people. So what do you suggest that needs to be done that's not happening with these plans? What strategies and addressing what do you think needs to happen with the people, right? Because that's the budget. I would like to just offer that to each of you to just be more specific about what you want to see. I'm not saying you have to come up with the answer necessarily. If you have some answers, would like to hear that. I know you all have made some recommendations around educators, for example, over the years, and effectiveness, particularly the Black and Brown Coalition. But could you get a little deeper down on what you want, what you think is required at this moment? Not all at once. Remember, you're being graded. You're being graded by Councilmember Alvarez.
Happy to go. When we talk about a plan, we're not talking about this today. We're not talking about a plan to increase first grade reading, or we're talking about a plan that encompasses the entire school system, that would send a message that the status quo is no longer working, that there'll be changes. I'm not sure if it's we're not talking about reducing staffing, or maybe if that's needed, that's fine. But what is the staff doing with their time? How are we involving parents? We have an office. Historically, one of our recommendations was for the MCPS to become a more culturally responsive, less racist system, or not racist system. We spend millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in activities that do not reach the intended targets. So what good is it, and sometimes MCPS's response is, oh, we made such an effort doing this and that. From the community's perspective, it doesn't matter if you made the effort. What matters is, did you reach the targets? Happened before the pandemic, during the pandemic, happens after the pandemic. We talked about really engaging communities. Has struggled from decades and decades ago, particularly reaching poor Black and Brown students and families. They do not have a communications, they do not have a dialogue with MCPS. The majority do not benefit from some of the things that MCPS offers. So it's an array of things. And again, I would start by saying what I said at the beginning is an acknowledgement so everyone in the county understands that we are in deep trouble, that the fate of our children is particularly Black, Brown, and poor. Compared to the potential, is going to be cut in half or more. No one talks about that. So there's no sense of alarm. The only people who are alarmed are the ones who look at the data. But our parents don't look at the data that MCPS publishes. They look at the data what they see about their children, and that data is deceiving. So we are working on specific things, like the early alert system and subsequent supports. But those are parts of the picture. That's not the whole. So we're talking about the whole and sending a clear message that change is needed. And for example, the superintendent said at the forum that we held the other day that MCPS is approximating that almost 50% of its resources are not used for educational, not for its core mission. And then we talk about psychologists and therapists and whatnot. We understand that MCPS social workers cannot provide social work. They cannot see clients because of something with the state. They're not best at that. HHS is best at that. So why are we not giving some of those funds to HHS, and they do what they do? MCPS dedicates to doing what it does best. I am not the superintendent. I'm not an educator. But some things are common sense. We have had conversations with board members in the past where we said to them, once you say you're going to do something, people are going to hold you accountable. And you do it wrong. No, you're not the best at it. But if you say you're going to do something, you'll be held accountable, and people get frustrated. And some board members said, can we really say no, that we cannot do it? So let's get real. That's what we're asking. Please get real. Lives of children's lives and futures are in jeopardy here. So let's get real and have serious conversations. We have not had that real conversation from our perspective. We tiptoe around the edges, and that's it. But no one knows that the emperor has no clothes, from our perspective. So while we have specific things, that is overarching.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah, Bridget, go ahead.
I want to, I think, add to that what Diego has said, and I think what we have all said about the importance of really understanding and explaining and communicating the data. We collect so much data about our children, about their performance, about our schools, about the safety and security, the incidents that happen. We collect data about facilities. We collect data about test scores. We collect data about teacher performance. And I would say that there is an incredible deficiency in how this data is used and how it is communicated. And to your point, in order to capture the current state of MCPS and the current state of education in our community, we need to understand the truth and the real story of what's happening. So explaining, sharing some of that data, and going back to it over and over and over again to show either that it's changing, hopefully in an upward direction, or it's not, and then going into the why of why that is happening. And then I also want to just piggyback on your comments about transparency and accountability. I do see this as something that I'm hopeful that we're seeing an improvement in that. But at this point, we cannot say that MCPS is consistently transparent about the challenges facing the system. We see it in communications that come home from individual schools. When incidents happen at those schools, we see it on the very highest level of the system when we talk about the results for the system. So a commitment to openness, transparency, accountability, even when the news isn't good, is something I think that would make a huge difference for us.
So, foot stomp everything that's been said, but going back to Councilmember, your question about specifics around what do we do. One of the things that is galling is there has been transparency, and we know that, and we know by the school, by the child, by the school, that half or more kids are not on grade. And then it begs the question, well, what is the plan, right? That has not been, what has not been happening, and what I believe now the state is calling for, that we're hearing the superintendent say we've been engaged in this field test and the like, is that once you know that a child is not on track, what are you going to do? And for some reason, that has now become a revelation, that we should have a plan for every child that is not on grade level. Yeah. Now, doesn't sound like rocket science. Doesn't sound like we need to add more people. We just need to make people accountable, and people need to do. And we need to manage to that outcome. And then, when we have that plan, we need to organize the resources we have, and if we're short on resources, that's a different conversation. But with 25,000 people in the system, we need to be knowing that the plan that we said that child needs, we are going to execute. And that, frankly, is not the case today. Not in all schools, not for all children. Right. And that is, I mean, without trying to oversimplify it, this is not a trivial exercise to do, but what do we need to do? It is somewhat that clear, is you know this child is deficient in these areas, you identify it, and then you organize your resources around getting that, addressing that. You know, at the high level, now how to do that is, you know, the master schedule has to be reorganized, people's assignments, where they're allocated. There's a lot of moving parts underneath, but ultimately it comes down to those fundamental elements being done effectively.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'm going to turn to Gabe, Councilmember Alvarez, in a second here. Appreciate all of that. We've tried to organize the E&C committee, the Education Culture Committee, to dig into, each of you brought up this, but you put a fine point on it, Byron. What are the issues getting in the way of our core function of math and literacy, right? We know the answer to some of those questions: attendance, mental health, poverty. Like, we can go down the list of things that impact it, right? And then secondarily, what are we doing to address all those issues? So we're trying to organize ourselves, MCPS is trying to organize themselves to address the things that get in the way of students achieving to the level that they can, and having that opportunity. But then secondarily, when a child does need help, or that differentiation in instruction, right, which has been in the education field for a long time, how do you know that they need help in a timely fashion, right? You mentioned early warning, and then get them those resources, right? And then you kind of parked this, but I don't want to park it. I think the way we've organized this is good. What is required to get that child help, right? And the resources, again, realizing 90% of our resources in MCPS are people. What is required? Some of it is certainly organization, but I think you'll hear from our educators and others, and having 4 kids in the school system at 4 different schools, when you have, a class of 30, half of them are in poverty, a third don't speak English as the first language, another third are in special education or have an IEP. All those kids can learn, but it requires more for them to learn, right? And I always use, I worked on the Harlem Children's Zone when they launched way back when, right? And this is Jeffrey, Canada, and this is one of the highest densely, most high poverty areas in New York. And they invested in all of these, based on geographical areas, all of these kids. We in the Obama administration used Promised Neighborhoods as a model on this model. The level of intensity required, like all those kids can learn, and you would always see this thing 100% and everyone did well, but what was required to help those students and families is at a scale and a level that per student that we are, it's light years of where we are. And so I agree with you on the transparency and accountability, and I agree with you that we don't know how bad the problem is, and people need to know. But they also need to know what's required to get the results that they want and expect. And that conversation, if we're far from just the conversation of what's happening, which we are, I agree with you, we're even further from the conversation of what's going to be required. And just to put that in dollars, we are investing $1,000 less per student than we were in 2012. And during that time, special education, English as a second language, and poverty have all skyrocketed. And again, all those kids can learn, but it's going to require better organization. And if you want that differentiation of student to each student, I know in my kids' elementary school and middle schools, those educators, at the levels they're staffed, it's almost impossible to do it. So we just have to have and we have to be able to hold all that at the same time, I think. Attendance. If you want to know why a kid's not showing up to school, someone's going to have to call that child's home and engage with those parents. And those can be long, language barrier, intensive time challenges. Who's going to do that? Who's going to do that with everything else going on, right? And if attendance is the driver, which we know it is, if you're not there, you can't learn. It's just we have to have a real conversation. Yes, Ms. Chase, and then I'm going to Councilmember Robert.
I wanted to agree with you and to say that that's some of the work that we're doing, right? To be clear and very specific. I have 4 kids in Montgomery County Public Schools. Well, the older 2 graduated, but my younger 2 are still there. Thank you. 33 and 26. It gets better, folks. It gets better. But we're clear in that one of our advocacy priorities is not only diverse and effective leaders in our school that look like and mirror our current demographic, but that they are supported to succeed, right? And so that means getting really honest about our human capital and what we can and cannot do, and inviting those in that can do, right? And so like Byron said, budget, absolutely. We need money to pay for things, but how can we be better stewards of what we have and where we are, right? Because what we have is what we have, right? And so we're coming to the table with that. And so we're being really specific I want to just go back really quickly to what we call the early warning system, but we're still juggling with the name. But we are working with MCPS on that, right? And so we're really getting real around the table about, well, these are the number of students who are below and well below reading and math proficiency here in our district. And we want parents to know early and often when their students are on grade level, below, and well below, right? And then what the school will do. So if Jimmy is on grade level but in danger of being below, parent, here's the intervention that's going to take place in school. Here's when, here's how long, here's how often we will communicate with you in a culturally competent way, not only in the language that you speak at home, but not in edu-speak, right? And here, parents, is how we are inviting you to partner with us and to support your student at home, right? And because what parents are hearing and what we're hearing from parents is they feel blamed, right? Your student's not coming ready, how can we partner and make sure that our parents know and can be a part of it as we are working to increase reading proficiency and math proficiency in school? So I just wanted to go back around to say we are acutely aware of, and we're not teachers and we're not, administrators, but that they need that support to succeed, right? You can't just say, here is the curriculum, make it happen. It's so different across each school. It's like each school is their own city, right? And each school and community is unique and they have unique needs, but there are things that are overarching, there are things that should be common, at least, and in terms of how we're dealing with some things. Again, we're not administrators, but what we know is they need to be supported to succeed, too. Our teachers and our administrators need to be supported to succeed, right? So and they need to know early and often, too.
Thank you. Councilmember Alvarez.
Oh, man. So I mean, we could be here for days having these conversations, but we've only got limited time this morning. I'll just speak a couple things at a high level. So one, as a parent, I can tell you that there have been so many great positives in the experience that my family has had, that our child has had, and obviously I'm a council member, and so I have privilege to a large degree, but generally speaking, the level of communication, the engagement, the support that my son feels like he is receiving has been off the charts, and we've been extremely impressed. Notwithstanding, I know the multitude of challenges that I'm familiar with sitting in this chair, talking with all of the people that I've spoken to over many years. And so, but I do, want to start from that place is that there's a lot going well and there's a lot going right. But we obviously can't be naive or blind to the fact that there are huge systemic problems that you all have been talking about and that have reached crisis levels. And I think we all need to up the urgency for sure. I'm feeling that, I'm sensing that. I have a responsibility as a member of this body to elevate that urgency, and I need to look in the mirror and see what I can do better. I would say a couple of things. I want to start where you just left off, because I could not agree with you more. And this goes back to when I was a youth outreach worker for a nonprofit organization and finding the inconsistencies among schools and how policies, which come down often from the central office with well intentions and I think pretty clear directions, but they're administered in wildly different ways, depending on capacity, depending on the strengths and weaknesses of the administrators of the school, depending on style and approach, depending on the needs of the school. And while it can't be a one-size-fits-all, that would be unreasonable, I do think that in my observation, we do need to do much more on the ground level to support administrators who may have great ideas or are conducting something new and different, and that we do that more consistently. So I'll give you an example. So we had a very robust conversation on safety and security the other day, and the principal for Richard Montgomery, and I know other schools I have since learned are doing this as well, but she took it upon herself to set up a parent group, leadership group, focused on safety, because that is a core issue, and 2 of our 3 students discussed it today in their testimony, We've heard that repeatedly from families. It's one of the reasons why parents are not sending their kids to school, because they don't feel safe sending their kids to school. It's leading to other issues with communication problems, not communicating to parents in real time or effectively when there is, God forbid, a bomb threat or some other terrible incident that's happening. So I think it's important for us. So with that as context, there is a question in all that. The Black and Brown Coalition discussed as one of your top priorities 2 years ago and have repeated it since, and you're absolutely correct, improving the method in which we enhance communication to parents and meeting parents where they are, who, let's face it, are overwhelmed and exhausted and dealing with everything they have to deal with. And I can say that in the first person. So can you talk a little bit about that and the communication? Have there been improvements since this was set forth as a priority? What are they, and what are other areas of need? Because I've heard also from parents where they feel blamed. One last example before turning it over to you, which I thought was really cool. So my son had strep throat a couple of weeks ago. He missed 2 consecutive days of school because of it, which was obviously, he had strep throat. It was legit. The next day, I got a really thoughtful and pleasant and warm text message from school saying, "Are you guys okay? What's going on? How can we help?" Which I thought was awesome. And so can you talk a little bit about that communication, because it is one of those core foundational issues?
Yeah. I think that one of the challenges with communication, I'm going to name a couple of challenges. One is that our educators, our administrators are highly educated, very thoughtful people, and they often write as highly educated people and are not thinking about the reading ability of the folks who are going to be receiving their messaging. So one thing that MCC-PTA has consistently advocated for is looking for a plain language approach in communications from the school district. Plain language meaning aimed at a 6th grade roughly reading level that can also then be translated more easily and is less complex. That's getting very into the weeds. Another thing is that we have these around communication is that there's a lot of bureaucratic processes that are very complex, which makes them hard to communicate. So if we can simplify some of the processes, maybe they would be easier to communicate. Very specific example, my son is an 8th grader. We live in the Down County Consortium. We are in the midst of the choice process. Deadline is tomorrow. I'm getting dozens of emails and text messages about it. I have a college education. I have a fairly decent reading ability, and I can't make heads or tails of a lot of these emails. And so then I wonder, what about my son's friends whose parents don't speak English as a first language, there's a lot of barriers that might be in the way of somebody understanding these. And so I think there is a lot of work that can be done on creating a understanding that the means of communication can improve. I also think that there needs to be a commitment from MCPS at all levels to the inherent dignity of every child and family in our system. And I hear entirely too many stories of a communication effort being made one time, and then there is just a complete drop. I'm going to take one more minute. I heard a story last week that literally left me in tears of a child, a middle school child whose parents don't speak English. And there was a communication to the family about something that was required for a class. The parents, and I don't know the full reason of why they weren't able to follow up on what the communication had been about, but this child sat in a class for almost an entire marking period without an essential piece of equipment needed for that class. This came to light because he told a tutor in a tutoring program he goes to through the city of Rockville that the reason he was failing his class is because he didn't have this essential piece of equipment. So once we heard that, a bunch of advocates were able to jump in and say, hey, why does this child not have this piece of equipment? But the real gap there was that the communication to the parents was not a priority. It was not followed up on. It was not done in a culturally competent way. Resources that are available, parent community coordinators, et cetera, were not used in order to treat that child with dignity, and that is not acceptable.
So I'm moved by your story that you got the text, because I wish everyone got a text like that. For many parents, this is the far west. particularly black, brown, and poor, if you know how to navigate the system and you have a connection with the system, then things are great, really, really great. But the reality for the other half is that they don't know how to navigate the system. It depends. If you're lucky, you get someone who's an advocate from the inside, and you get help. But for many, the doors are closed, and you said MCPS calls once. What happens with the majority of black and brown parents is that you get a no for an answer the first time, or you feel offended by the way you were treated, you don't come back because it's painful to go back to a place that mistreats you. So this is not new to MCPS. 2 years ago or so, Dr. McKnight asked the Black and Brown Coalition to work with MCPS on a set of recommendations and that as to how for the system to become more culturally responsive and less racist. We work with MCPS staff, maybe there were like 5, 10, and we worked on I don't know how many recommendations, and we sent them to MCPS. The staff of MCPS was thrilled that these recommendations were coming. What happened is nothing. One of the recommendations that we submitted was the creation of a private-public partnership of a constituent support office, particularly for those who find it very difficult to get an answer from the system. The system has 1 million doors and maybe 5 million windows, and parents don't know which one to access. Some of those doors lead nowhere. Some people don't want to hear from you because then they have to report that there's bullying or there's this or that. Some others do, but many don't. So the parents are left in limbo, and they're desperate, and then they retreat. So the idea was to create this public-private partnership in order to facilitate access to answers, regarding bullying, regarding racism, regarding access to supports, regarding academics, whatever it is, and have people who are really trained and who would then have the authority to call the system and say, listen, such and such, I'm calling on behalf of this mother who needs that. And in order to facilitate the entry of these parents and families into the support systems that MCPS has. Not only that, but that would help document the type of issues that families have. So the superintendent and the leadership of MCPS and the board all would know what are the issues that people are trying to resolve, and then how well or not MCPS and this constituent support entity are doing their job in order to resolve them. So then you can think proactively about, okay, we need more resources here or there. Anyways, a big effort was done and nothing came of it.
I just want to tie back because one of the kind of underlying beliefs to what you're saying is, well, it's a lot of the non-native English speakers that have this communication gap. That's not true. I mean, first off, and sometimes people believe as well, people who are less educated are the ones. That's not true. You've got some very highly educated people who look at this and go, I have no idea what this is. And we had at the town hall, we had some very highly educated parents that have said, I have a background in this and I still don't know what they're saying. We talked about almost a year ago, November, we had a big town hall with over 800 people, and we put up there very clearly what parents mostly look at, those who figure out how to get into Synergy or the parent view. If you can figure that out, that's the first thing. Then you got to troll around the internet, all the websites to pull information if you know to do that. But you've got a report card that tells you some information if you're used to the U.S. system. It tells you all sorts of different pieces that may or may not make sense. And then you've got other standard tests that tell you something very different. And then you've got teachers and staff in the building sometimes say, well, don't worry about that. Just focus on this. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's not. So you've got both the kind of communication that has been talked about. It's a dearth of information. And then you've got the other extreme, which is you've got tons of conflicting information out there. How do I decipher what is actionable, what to do with this? And that's really critical, that both of those result in kind of an analysis, a paralysis, like, one, you don't know that there's a problem. The other is, I have no idea whether there is. I've got all this information or these data points that don't tell me anything. So I want to just look at both ends of that.
That's extremely helpful. I appreciate that. That tracks with what I've been sensing, feeling, but it's important to reaffirm that. I'll just note two final things now on the communication front and yield back to you, Mr. Chair. I guess it's not just the schools. Oftentimes, MCPS is trying to do everything and be all things to everyone. And Diego mentioned this in his comments. I think there's an acknowledgement, and MCPS to a large degree has understood, and I've worked with 5 superintendents now, who all, generally speaking, have understood they cannot do this by themselves. And so there have been initiatives at a high level, at a micro level, to forge partnerships with community-based organizations, nonprofits, community action groups, sister county agencies, and a lot of those have worked and worked well, but there hasn't also been consistency in those either. And so I do think that, and I have appreciated, especially over the last 6 months, I've had numerous conversations with Dr. Taylor about this, and I do very much sense an authentic acknowledgement that the school system wants to partner with organizations that they know that they can help. And so that's going to be something that we're going to have to reinforce. And one specific example, as Diego also mentioned, is the issue of behavioral health. And social workers have limitations in what they can do within the school system based on caseloads, but how they can specifically engage. But we do need to look, and that's just one example of how we can invest in other ways to still get to the same or much better result. And there's lots of precedents. I mean, our school health nurses are actually employees of our county's Health and Human Services Department. And so we do need to look in those areas where there may be others who are in a better position to be able to perform that work. And the final thing I'll say in communication is this, that I and my wife have experienced this, text messages or emails that we didn't fully understand. Sometimes we would call the school or the teacher themselves to get clarity, but other times we've gone to other parents who have been through the system or have children who are older who can help us navigate and actually decode some of the stuff that we are seeing. And so I do want to uplift MCCPTA and really acknowledge the importance of them as an institution. At our school, they are very active and aren't just waiting for parents to come to them. They are actively meeting parents where they are. So that's another resource that I think should be enhanced. In addition to the systemic and the administrative staff, there are other ways that we can get communication out to parents too. Thank you. I yield back to you, Mr. Chair.
Appreciate that and appreciate the conversation. That, like I said, we could go for hours in each of these panels. It's just a reminder we're going to need to do it more often. I want to note that we've been joined by Councilmember Mink virtually. Thank you for being here. Parent view. So I just want to park a couple things in the parking lot here. I was actually here trying to get on so you get an email that I've set up notification. At one point in time, I got into parent view. And I set up notifications about grades. So I get a notification from Canvas that says your ex-student's thing has been graded. You click, if you want to view the grade, it sends you to a site where you have to go back to parent view. And it'll take you to almost an error page, like you've reached a page that you're not supposed to be on. If you click the thing in the email from Canvas, it'll send you back to the thing say you got to go to this. And if you can figure out to say, okay, well, I got to go back to parent view, then you have to hope you remember that login, which I've probably reset 3 or 4 times. And then you have to, once you get in, it's it's pretty confusing about to get to where you want to go. There's like 100 boxes. You got to know where to go. And I'm the chair of the Education and Culture Committee. I think one of the things I would love to come back to at some point is we have to have some data on who is accessing Parent View. Like there's got to be a back end clicking of like, like who is actually getting access to their students' grades. And it matters because, to your point, and there's all these stories, is your child failing? What have they not turned in? Are you able to, and if you can't even get in and navigate that, that's like step 0.1 of the actual solving the problem. And that has been an issue, and there's no perfect system, but I do hear that from parents a lot and have experienced that, as you can hear in the frustration of my voice myself. Yeah, see.
Sorry, I've heard it from our teachers as well. It's a pain point for them as well. Entering grades, getting emails from parents saying, why isn't this in for my child? The teacher has, but it's in Canvas and it's not. It's been a pain point for teachers as well. And also trying to email from that system for teachers. I email from Gmail to the teachers. I can't do it from Parent View. It only let me see one of my children, not the other. It's a pain point for teachers as well. It is.
So, yes.
I also
Started
just want to.
down the rabbit hole of parent.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, I'm not to, excuse me, not to take us too much farther down that rabbit hole, but I want to just validate your experience. I literally can only access Canvas to see actual assignments and the prompts and what my son has turned in through one particular computer in my home where I've shared, where I've saved the password in the right place and the bookmarks are in the right place. And if I try to do it on my phone, it never works. If I try to do it on a different computer, it never works. So I'm validating your experience. I've had it too. It's a real challenge.
Yeah. And creates anxiety.
I just want to, so I want to pull us out of the rabbit hole and just suggest one of the things, because I know this is your budget conversation. One of the things that because I've lived in various parts of an experience. One of the things that is beautiful about Montgomery County is we really are asset rich in terms of intellect and community. We really have one of the most highly educated communities here. And as we talk about resources, and I know you're talking about mostly financial.
Not only.
I know, not only, but that is kind of what the council's.
Yeah, that's our job.
That's what the council's going to delve out. If there's anything that we can encourage and enable for the school system to tap into and leverage the community's assets, because I have an office in Montgomery County. I lived in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, grew up there. I have an office in Montgomery County, Alabama, and a few other places. And I'm telling you, one of the things that in my office in Alabama we wished they had was the kind of intellectual asset base that this county has. If we could find a way to leverage that to help our children, because at the end of the day, there are end of the day finite financial resources. But if that is still not going to address, we have to find creative ways to leverage the other assets we have
Yeah.
to achieve the goal.
And some of that obviously is happening, but we could always use more.
Yeah.
Councilmember Mink, I want to move to the next panel, but I want to give you an opportunity if you wanted to ask something briefly here.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it. Apologies for.
Yes, we can hear you. We're just trying to turn you up a little bit, but yes, you can keep going. Keep going.
that are organized with the parents and are really specifically targeted toward specific populations, especially in regards to mental health. Maybe that don't even necessarily use the words mental health, but that are providing resources and information and guidance in a way that is really culturally tuned in to the audience that it's reaching, and the importance of working with directly with that community to do that. And I know that's something that folks on the panel have worked to do some of that, but I wanted to just see if there was if anybody wanted to comment on that, and specifically in regards to mental health challenges that our young people and our families are facing today, and also some of the stigma that there is around mental health and seeking out mental health resources, and kind of working through that with parents and with community members.
Thank you, Councilmember Mink. Health and Human Services does a phenomenal job at doing that. Again, if the only thing you have is therapists and social workers, then everyone will need a social worker or a therapist. But if you create other opportunities, and that's what we talk about when we talk about innovation, no, parent support groups, etc. For the vast majority, that will do it. But if you do not offer it, then everyone needs a social worker. So that is something that's been done in various communities with tremendous success. And again, it's done by HHS. So again, to the points of the council members before, that not everything needs to be done by MCPS. No? MCPS has a big problem with its core mission in terms of literacy and math, and other people are trained to do the things that impact that. So 100% in agreement. Can I say something else?
Absolutely.
About the conversation we had. If this gets to a level of crisis, no, if we acknowledge we're in a crisis, this is like a war, no? War doctors and nurses to triage. Right now we have a policy. If you don't make a decision, you're making a decision, basically. We have a policy that no one talks about. It's okay for 50% of black and brown students not to do well. Many will not graduate, no? It is a de facto policy, no? Because we're not doing anything about that. So those are the type of we do not talk to families who we know students are not going to graduate about what alternatives they have. So there's lots of things that don't do it, but when we talk about honest conversations, we mean that. Talk to the parents, say, listen, your son is, or your daughter is no, look at what's happening here. She has 3, 4 more years, 5 more years. If she doesn't do this, no, with your help we can do it. If not, there's this alternative. That's not racism, that's reality. And I think, anyways, so that's what we mean, but we are making decisions every day, and those decisions have yielded tremendous negative outcomes for many hundreds of thousands of black and brown students over time. So that's what we mean by let's speak reality here.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Diego. And I think that a lot of the conversation that we're having today does speak to a conversation that we've had before and had recently in committee, in which we've discussed how when we're looking at the opportunity gap that's evident in the academic achievement results, and when we talk about the interventions that are being put forward, it's a mistake to only talk about academic interventions, curriculum, one-on-ones and tutoring. That's part of it. But if we don't look at the rest of it, it's a holistic issue, and systemic racism is evident in a breadth of ways. And if we're not addressing all of those ways, then we are missing out. We're never going to remedy the situation. So even when we're, again, looking specifically at academic results, we have to be talking about solutions that are not just obviously academic in nature.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Howe. Yeah.
I just want to make a comment. I think that threads together something that Diego said, along with Councilmember Mink's question and Councilmember Albernaz's comment, is that I think we're absolutely right in saying MCPS has to focus on core mission, and we have a wealth of nonprofit organizations in Montgomery County, community-based organizations who are community-based, who are culturally competent, who are providing amazing youth development, out of school time, behavioral health, mental health, all sorts of different services. And if we can really work to create a system in which those partnerships are valued and prioritized, I think we can begin to move the needle in that way as well without overburdening the central office of MCPS. And I'll just make a comment that last night I was at Northwood High School for the open house and spent a few minutes engaging with the Wellness Center staff there who are identity employees. And it's an amazing and wonderful program. We should have one in every single one of our high schools to support our students. And that is not staffed by MCPS. It would not have an impact on the MCPS budget, but it would make an enormous difference for our communities.
Thank you for that. Really important. And I do want to be clear too that in my initial question that my intent was not to say that this is something, the work necessarily that MCPS should be doing in isolation. That these are services that need to be provided to families in a culturally competent way, and MCPS provides, our schools provide a touch point, but the very fact that we have the wellness centers in our schools is a clear acknowledgement of the partnerships that we need to do this type of work. So thanks for saying that. I yield.
Thank you, Councilmember May. Thank you all for being here. I know I have the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee on my committee, my good friend, and we as the Education and Culture Committee, now fully compromised, have the most children of any 3 council members on the council. There's 10 between us, so we are all in. I will say that the school nurses, for example, I see her sitting here. There's never enough of them. No, they're not in the building, but just from previous. There's people. The HHS services are overburdened as well, and so we just have to be cognizant of the ratios there. That, for example, a service that does work well, they are stretched to the max as well, and we just have to. We have to have hold all of it at the same time. Last thing I'll say on communication, the parent 23-24 survey, climate survey. Elementary school, only 8% return rate. Middle school, 7%, high school, 5%. And to your point of just like who we're hearing from, how they're engaging, the communication, I think that's a really, really important point. Thank you all. We will have you back. This was very helpful. Thank you for being here. We're going to bring up our union partners now. So MCEA, SEIU, and McCap. And thank you to our independent schools who have been patiently waiting. You're gonna be. Continue to patiently wait. Thank you. I appreciate it. But we're gonna get to you. And Mr. Stein, we have from MCEA. We have Dr. Handy from McCap, and we don't have Ms. Morrison, but I know you. Give me your name again, sir. Chris Kano from SEIU. Good to see you, Chris. So we'll start. We'll go ladies first, if that's okay.
All right. Good afternoon.
And if just before you go, can we mute the thing that we had that feedback? I know we had gotten away. We were able to. I think it's related to hearing Councilmember Mink better. Sorry, we need an upgrade. We need a capital improvement up here. And that's been the case for a while, but so whoever's in the back, if you could do that, thank you. But go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon, members of the Education and Culture Committee. My name is Dr. Christine Handy, and I am the president of the Montgomery County Association of Administrators and Principals, MCAP, and the Montgomery County Business and Operations Administrators, MCBOA, representing over 900 MCPS leaders, including principals, assistant principals, central services leaders, and business and operations administrators. Our members lead from the front lines, impacting every aspect of our students' educational experiences. We are a union that's connected to AFL-CIO through the American Federation of School Administrators, our national affiliate, and we are AFSA local number 146. Today, I'm here to share some of our key interests and priorities for fiscal year 2025. So first, let's talk about safety and mental health. Safety in our schools has become a pressing concern. The increase in incidences of hate and violence has made safety one of our top priorities. Our administrators need the resources, staffing, training, and support to manage crises effectively and to maintain safe learning environments. Additionally, mental health resources for both students and staff are crucial. Next, this is a year of collective bargaining for us. Our administrators are committed to our students, and offering competitive wages is essential to recruit and retain these dedicated leaders. Last year, we lost over 90 administrators and principals, with some retiring mid-year, which was unusual. There's a hiring crisis in the field of education, but Montgomery County does not have to be in that crisis. We're advocating for a meaningful cost of living adjustment and step increases that reflect inflation, which is real, and real wage growth to remain competitive with the surrounding school districts. Additionally, we're advocating reducing administrative workload by filling vacant positions, getting subs for employees on long-term leave, and looking at current practices to better balance work demands on our leaders. So next, let's talk about the budget. In support of our school leaders to meet the evolving needs of our school communities, the following are some of our budget priorities. Assistant principals in every school. We believe every school, including our special schools, should have an assistant principal to provide essential support to both the students and the staff. Additional administrator pay for evening events. High school administrators average around 100 evening events per year, resulting in frequent 12 to 14-hour workdays. It's making it difficult to attract high school leaders. And so in order to attract them and to prevent burnout and support work-life balance, we request funds to compensate other administrators who can share in supervising evening events. This will ensure the coverage that we need for these events without placing excessive demands on our high school leaders. Our elementary schools will greatly benefit from a 12-month secretary in the main office to support summer enrollments, support parents, and to address student needs year-round. And to better serve our diverse learners, we advocate that a dedicated resource teacher for special education be in each elementary school, and that would be included in the budget. So next, I want to talk about professional development and leadership support. All of our members require targeted, impactful, and forward-thinking professional development to grow continuously as leaders as they serve the district students. We advocate for MCPS to provide more robust leadership training that equips all of our administrators to lead a progressive workforce, support students with increasingly diverse learning needs, and to be able to respond to today's complex crises. Lastly, MCAP is committed to strengthening our advocacy efforts and partnership with the County Council and local legislators. We believe our shared values invested in education, supporting staff and nurturing learning environments, and ensuring equitable access to resources reflects the goals of this council. With our state legislators, MCAP strongly supports the addition of a school principal on the State Board of Education. Along with other leaders across the state, we've been working to get a bill passed that will add a principal to the state board that already has a teacher, a parent, and a student. What is missing from this equation is a principal. So if any of you could help us with that, we would love it. In closing, MCAP's mission is to empower the leaders who empower our schools and offices. A new chapter has begun with the arrival of Superintendent Dr. Thomas Taylor. We all want MCPS to be a premier school district once more and a destination employer in the education arena. So we believe that fully funding the MCPS budget is a direct investment in the success of our students, teachers, leaders, and the entire MCPS community. So I want to thank you for your time, your support, and your commitment to the well-being of our schools, and I look forward to working together to achieve these goals. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Handy. Really appreciate the organization and clarity of your comments. Mr. Stein.
Good morning, council members. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is David Stein. Oh, happy Halloween. I am dressed today as my costume is a high school math teacher, which I've done for 31 years. I worked in MCPS for 28. I taught at Blair High School for 22, but I'm on leave right now serving as president of the Montgomery County Education Association. I'm especially proud to be here with other community organizations, as MCA is made up of 14,000 educators, teachers, counselors, speech pathologists, media specialists, and so much more, who are proud members of our community, all communities across this county. Community members and our voices are essential in shaping what happens in our county. We are closest to the work, to the students, the parents, and the people who are affected by the policies that the county council passes. And we community members are strongest when we work together, when we speak together, including in forums like this one. So thank you for having this. I'm here today to speak briefly about MCA's goals for the school year. As you can imagine, we have a lot of goals, and we spend a lot of time organizing and advocating with our members to achieve these goals. But today, I want to just spend time outlining our union's central goal of fighting for a transformational budget that truly, finally, meets the needs of our system and of our students. Every day, MCA members invest all of our energy and talents in our students, working hard to nurture the potential that each student possesses. MCA members do this in overcrowded classrooms, in schools without functioning HVAC systems, in schools that are under-resourced and understaffed. Educators invest in students because that's what we do, no matter the learning conditions or the challenges that we face. The question is, when is the county and its elected officials going to fully invest in us, in our students, and in public education in this county? It'll be no surprise to any of you here when I say that MCA members are frustrated when we know that the county and its leaders can be doing so much more to support our students by fighting for transformational investments that would create the learning conditions that each student needs. Since the 2008 financial crisis, we have witnessed a gradual yet steady decline in inflation-adjusted funding for MCPS. And Councilmember Joando said this earlier, but at the same time, our needs have continued to grow. Increased populations of students in poverty, of special education students, of English language learners, all of which need more, not fewer resources. And whether we invest and by how much is a reflection of our values and what we believe in. What educators, students, parents, and countless stakeholders in this county need are for the members of this committee to be champions for a transformative school budget that supports the success of every student in this district. And now, I know Education and Culture Committee members did this last year, but this year we need the entire council to join you in that effort. So what does a fully funded, what does a transformational budget look like? Let me just try to paint a picture. It would be equitable, and it would ensure that students most in need receive the supports they need, particularly English language learners and students in special education programs. It would mean ensuring that funding goes to students who have historically not received the support that they are owed and deserved, including Black and Brown students. It would meaningfully address our students' mental health needs. We would hire enough mental health professionals, including counselors, social workers, and psychologists with manageable caseloads, enabling them to build authentic relationships with students. And it would transform the classroom into a space where kids can thrive, staffed with expert educators, including paraprofessionals represented by our sibling union, SEIU Local 500, whom teachers and students rely on to succeed. And it would mean compensation and benefits that respects MCA members' professionalism and would serve to retain and recruit the country's finest educators. What do we have to do to make this a reality? Well, we need to implement progressive and sustainable taxation policies. In a wealthy county like ours, we should not be begging and scrambling every year for the resources that we all recognize our students and educators deserve. And it would mean working together to craft the policies and solutions that reflect the voices of communities from across this county to make sure that our schools are working for everyone. And it would mean standing up against those who will say we can't afford to make investments in our public schools. Look, I want to be honest, learning outcomes are not where we want them to be, but the solution is not to slowly starve the system, only worsening learning conditions and exacerbating the educator shortage. Instead, the strategy is to invest in proven solutions like hiring more educators, lowering class size, giving educators the planning time that they need to meet the individual needs of their students. And I hope everybody in this room can come together this year to take these steps. Our students and our schools deserve nothing less. So thank you for having us, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Mr. Kano.
Honorable members of the Montgomery County Council Education and Culture Committee, I'm Christopher Cano. I'm the Director of Political and Legislative Affairs for SAU Local 500, representing over 10,000 members among the educational support staff in Montgomery County Public Schools. I come before you today as an ally and friend of this community, and I'm here today to highlight for you what our members are experiencing as shortcomings in their employment with Montgomery County Public School System. We hope that this committee can walk alongside us in taking the first steps to address them. But first, to understand where we're going and what progress still remains, I wish to share with you the vision of our members. We believe all K-12 students, Black, Brown, Asian American, Pacific Islander, Indigenous, White, immigrant, and students with exceptional needs deserve high-quality, fully funded public schools that support their intellectual, emotional, and physical development. Every student should have access to healthy meals, transportation, counseling, and support services. We believe all K-12 workers, non-instructional and instructional alike, are essential to student success and deserve respect and dignity on the job. Every school worker should have an unimpeded access to a full-time union job with a living wage, health benefits, job security, professional development, career ladders, and the option of year-round employment. We believe K-12 schools should anchor our communities and partner with parents. Every school should be clean, healthy, safe, sustainable, and fully staffed. Every school should provide access to the wraparound services students and families need to thrive. Private contractors must not be allowed to siphon profits away from our children's education. We believe that discrimination and harassment, the banning of books, and the targeting of gender-expansive and marginalized communities have no place in our schools. These vision points are directly related to the key issues our members are facing, of which I would like to highlight 6 of the most pressing. First, as a school system, we need MCPS to rely less on temporary part-time employees rather than hiring full-time support staff. This kills morale, especially when we see outside contractors making more money than full-time staff. For many support staff, being relegated to TPT for years means less accruals on retirement and other benefits. The instability of TPT positions hurts student learning outcomes due to a lack of consistency. Second, attractive salaries and benefits are vital for the retention of quality support staff. We believe a $25 minimum wage pegged to inflation would be the basis for creating a strong foundation. We believe all K-12 jobs must be family-sustaining union jobs. No educational support staff member should have to work more than one job to afford to live in Montgomery County. Many times we see people asked to hold credentials and licenses to work as educational support staff, all while being paid wages that are not even competitive in the fast food industry. Third, we wish to see more hours for support staff. Support staff should be provided adequate hours in order to provide a living wage for a job for their families. How can our school system endeavor to provide community-centered, equity-focused wraparound services for our residents when there are not even enough hours provided to our existing workers to provide them? Fourth, we need more paraeducators in the classroom. Students with exceptional needs are becoming more prevalent in our school system. Providing more paraeducators in the classrooms is vital to student success. There are massive amounts of vacancies among paraeducators at MCPS. Retaining paraeducators goes back to wages, benefits, and professional development. Fifth, we ask that educational support staff be provided paid professional development days rather than the no work, no pay days currently taking up calendar space during the school year. Planning and paid professional development days will result in better student outcomes and retention of educational support staff that feel valued. Lastly, and yet most importantly, workload and staffing issues remain a constant challenge at MCPS in the wake of constraining budgets. When positions are cut, the amount of work remains the same for those left behind. This is most prevalent in central office, where support staff cuts have resulted in the remaining support staff taking on greater workloads, eventually leading to increased burnout, and this cycle is unsustainable. As we approach the upcoming budget cycle for our school system, understand that we have asked the Board of Education and MCPS leadership to address these issues. We have asked the members of this esteemed council to address these issues in previous years. We have even advocated in Annapolis to the elected members of our General Assembly to help us in addressing these issues. I now come before this committee today to once again ask that you address these issues faced by the hardworking educational support staff of Montgomery County Public Schools. As budgets tighten, I would caution against underfunding our school system with already exacerbated staffing shortages stretching folks thin. Faculty and staff are facing increased workloads. burnout, and decreased morale due to inadequate support, which ultimately compromises the quality of education received by our most vulnerable students. We also see how underfunding worsens existing societal inequities and thus undermines efforts to promote social and economic mobility. I ask you, the members of this committee, to take these issues to your colleagues on the County Council, to honor our negotiated contracts, including pay increases and benefits for all educators and staff in the school system. The working conditions of our faculty and staff are the learning conditions of our students, conditions that must be of the highest quality for the vitality and future of this community, and I urge you to fully fund the MCPS budget in the coming year and address the issues highlighted here today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kano, not Kano. I'll start, and then I'll turn to my colleagues on the committee, who I'm assuming will have a question or two. Thank you first for presenting. I'm really glad the order of this. I think it was a good order so that everyone's hearing from each other. That's a part of this, right? No way we solve all of these things if we're not talking together. I'll just start with you, Mr. Kano, the paraeducators, and I've said this many, many times. I've gotten emotional about it. The impact that they've had on my children specifically has been instrumental. The folks you represent are often some of the lowest paid workers, as you mentioned. I think part of the reality too is where a lot of us are concerned about school security, for example. I keep mentioning this because people need to know a starting school security officer starts at $38,000 a year in MCPS. Unacceptable, not a livable wage. And there's not enough of them, right? So, but let's talk about paras. You mentioned the vacancy rate. Do you have, what is the vacancy rate today? Do we know, or how many are missing? And in addition to that, what are some of the barriers that you're seeing to retaining paras and getting new ones on board?
Well, after consulting with our Vice President of Paras, Sally Murick, who you've seen testify before here, there were hundreds of vacancies last that we checked. In regards to paras, also the issue I brought up about temporary part-time staff, many paras are being TPT'd, and so that we don't actually have paraeducators who have that full-time job security. Also, as a part-time employee, there's the issues around wages and benefits, and then of course the issue around professional development for paraeducators. Vice President Murick has put to me, to the council, and to other folks many times that they've had a cut in her professional development, that she went from having a budget to do professional development to not having a budget at all, and trying to have to cannibalize and figure out other ways to do professional development for paraeducators throughout the school year. So those are just some of the issues that are highlighting. If you want more specifics, I'm happy to get those directly to your office.
Yeah, and we can work with between you and MCPS, just something to book in. We always do an update on vacancies and all the various positions. But yeah, you said hundreds. That was what I thought, but want to know if the trends.
Remember, we were at a meeting recently, shared from OHRD, that there are about 200 paraeducator vacancies in Montgomery County Public Schools, and our school leaders are really, really concerned. I mean, our teachers, our classrooms are suffering because we cannot hire people to fill these vacancies, and it's a problem. And as our fellow union member stated, the problem is the pay and TPT, where they do not get benefits. So we want people to work 7 hours a day and not offer them any benefits by calling them temporary part-time employees.
Not sustainable. Yeah, Mr. Stein. This is something that, the reason I asked this question first, because it reverberates.
Well, that's what I was about to say.
Classroom management, administrator.
It impacts all the employees, and not only are there 200 vacancies, but they tend to be focused in special ed paraeducator vacancies. And again, our most vulnerable students, our most needy students, where we need to be putting our resources, we're not doing it because they're TPT and they can't fill the jobs. And so this is absolutely crucial for our members, that we get paraprofessionals working wages, full-time work with benefits, so that we can attract the professionals that we need in our classroom.
And I'm sorry, because this all touches all of us, and I always say that we expect them to have at least a associate's degree. So we ask them to have an associate's degree, but we want to pay them like they have a GED. or less?
Appreciate it.
If I could just home in and be more specific on this issue. I mean, there are certain paraeducators that, because of the nature of the intensity of the students that they're serving, may even need up to master's level credentials in order to adequately serve them, and they're being offered pay that's not even competitive in the fast food industry that I mentioned in my remarks. So when we go back to wages, benefits, professional development, and we look at why we're not retaining even the folks that we have now, you know, this is a core issue.
Well, and if you think about the last conversation, individualized instruction for every student. You can't do it in a classroom of 30 without paras that are there to help. You just can't. I'm telling you, I'm not telling you, you just can't do it. It's impossible to do. Thank you. Thank you for that. One more question, then I'll turn to Councilmember Make and then Councilmember Alvarez. The principal, I had not heard this assistant principal thing. I've heard it, but I want you to talk about it a little more. You mentioned assistant principal in every school. Could you talk about where there aren't assistant principals and why that's a big issue for you and your members?
Yes. So we have 5 special schools, and of the 5, 3 or 4, Ryan, 3 or 4 do not have an assistant. They do not even have a resource teacher. They're special schools that serve special students. They do not have a special education resource teacher. They do not have an assistant. And so that principal, those principals are forced to not only provide the leadership of the school, sit in on every IEP meeting, and they're a special school, so they're not just a few. And they do not have the support that they need to support the instructional leadership of the school and the operations. They're doing it solo, and it's a lot. And it makes it difficult when we have vacancies.
Those 5 special schools is what you're referring to.
Yes, our special schools, and we do have two of our small elementary schools do not have an assistant either.
Got it. Okay. All right, we're going to try to wrap this part of the conversation up just so everyone knows by 11:30. Then we will get to the independent schools, and then we will do the appropriations should be very quickly. So just to give everyone a time check. Councilmember Make.
Thanks. Mr. Cano, you used the phrase that there's para positions that are being TPT. Does that mean that like positions that are not being para positions that are not being filled are then being converted to TPT positions? Can you speak to what you meant by that specifically?
Well, there's a prevalence in the system right now of many paraprofessionals being classified as temporary part-time staff to what I can only see as a cost-saving measure, when in fact what we really need is those positions to be full-time staffed. Also, the nature of just being temporary itself causes issues with consistency, especially with special needs students who need that consistency from a paraeducator, from someone that they can count on day in and day out. So again, if there's issues with funding in the school system, the way out is not to temporarily staff and try and contract its way out. We need full-time, fully staffed positions, and these are the issues that we're encountering.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarity. And then, do we have individuals who are paraeducators who in their positions they're being asked to convert to TPT, or we're talking about positions, not individuals? It's a problem either way, but I just want to make sure I'm clear.
So there are folks currently who have been in TPT roles for up to longer than a year, 2 years, and of course, as I said before, when folks are relegated to TPT, they're not accruing benefits, they're not accruing years towards retirement, and so again, if folks are going to be TPT for 5 years out of their professional career, and they realize they have an additional 5-6 years they need to work before they can retire, I mean that's one of the issues that goes back to retention. So again, we're not going to contract our way out of the staffing shortages that we have in the existing school system.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I'll just note that on the many school visits that I've been on, even this year, that this has been a recurring theme, maybe in every school that I've gone to, the reliance on TPTs and how extraordinarily challenging many of these, the job functions that these TPTs are performing are, and then you compare that to the wage that they're being paid and the lack of job security and everything else you mentioned, and the number of hours, to your point about being if we're comparing, wages to fast food services, we should also compare hours where they could probably pick up more hours also on the fast food side. So there's a huge problem there. So thank you for raising that. Is that I guess this is a question for anybody who'd like to speak to it, but obviously, we've had a lot of change in leadership at the top of MCPS. Would anybody like to speak to how things are going, the direction things are moving on any of these tracks?
Yeah, I mean, we have a new superintendent, and I think we're seeing a lot of change. I think the reality is that the school district has an enormous trust deficit. A trust deficit with their staffs, with elected officials, with the community as a large, with the parents. We have an enormous trust deficit that we need to overcome. And I think the superintendent, from his first day, I think it was pretty apparent to everybody that the tone was quite different, that there was more listening going on, and that there was more acknowledging of problems. And I think too often in the past, we've not been willing to confront the problems that we have. And I've been really encouraged at the tone of the superintendent in willing to do that. I think the transparency is improving in terms of where our money is going, and he's been quite clear that we need to be prioritizing the money going into the classroom. And so I think all of that is good. I've also seen some concrete things he's doing. He's working on zero-based budgeting, which I think is going to really increase all of our understanding of the budget and your understanding when you have to fund the budget. And so I think all of that is good. He's new, so I tell my members we're cautiously optimistic because we have to see, as Christine said, we're in bargaining right now, and we need to come out of that with a good compensation and benefits so we can retain and recruit. But I've been really encouraged by the tone and the transparency, and then some of the more concrete things that are happening. So fingers crossed.
So I will ditto what my colleague has just stated, and I think one of the key things that we see in the new superintendent is his level of transparency, and he listens, and he's very open communication. So I think those are some critical areas that we appreciate, and we're hopeful for our school system in the direction that we're headed.
Thank you. That really resonates, and I will say that aligns with what I've been hearing in conversations across the district as well. It's obviously a challenging financial space that we're in, that we have been in, and that we're going to be in, in the coming years. But there really is agreement about the needs that everyone here has been expressing today, and the desire to address those needs. Funding difficulties obviously come from fiscal realities, but it does also come from, I think that the points you're raising around transparency, a need, a desire, concerns about, for the public to really be able to understand where those dollars are going, that they really are going to address the needs that we're speaking about here, which everybody agrees we want to address. So making sure that we continue to work on increasing the transparency, which has been a focus of this committee over the last several years here, and that we are bringing those conversations to the full council as well as to the public. I agree that is key. One other question, this is a little bit of an aside, but I want to have the opportunity to ask here. I've heard that there are some issues with special ed and ESL teachers getting the teachers' materials to implement the literacy curriculum. Can anybody speak to that, or if that is an issue and what that issue is, if you can tell?
Yeah, thank you. It is an issue. As you know, we have a new K through 5 literacy curriculum this year, and like any curriculum, the implementation has been bumpy in a lot of ways, and there are issues in terms of pacing that need to be worked out, and in terms of the appropriateness of some of the lessons, I think that will be worked out. But I thought one of the really outrageous developments at the beginning of this school year was that special education teachers and English language learner, the teachers of English language learners were not given physical copies of the instructional materials. And that was a choice that was made last spring in the budget cuts to allegedly prioritize, but that's really outrageous because of all the people to deprioritize as again, our most vulnerable students. And so we did not know about it until the fall when they didn't show up. And these teachers were told, well, you'll just have to work on the online versions of the teacher's material, which is not an acceptable answer. And I know the superintendent is trying to work on it, but again, it comes back to underfunding schools. And it comes back to that our schools are under-resourced for the work that we have to do, and our increased needs are not being met. And I think it's an outrageous example, but I think it is just another example of the challenges that we're up against. But so thank you for asking about that.
Okay, thank you for laying that out and explaining the connection to the budget. And we had teachers who were having trouble getting permission to run photocopies at the end of the last year. So this is another example in that category. And hopefully, with the increased transparency, there will be more agreement about increasing the level of funding, even within a tight fiscal year, but increasing the level of funding to address some of these concerns directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mink. Councilmember Albanaz.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief, even though, again, we could spend weeks with this panel in particular talking about all the opportunities and challenges and the threats, too. And there's a big one coming up potentially next Tuesday. Depending on the outcome of that election, it's going to potentially make all of our jobs extremely harder than they already are. So I hope everybody votes, for God's sakes. Let me just say a couple of things. First, acknowledging and thanking each of you for your leadership and the work that you do and that of all of your members. What you're commenting on tracks once again with what we've been hearing on the ground and what you all have been saying consistently. I also am very happy to hear that at least out of the gates there have been some great relationship building happening and hopefully more trust established that I think will lead to better outcomes for all of us. So I think that's great. Could you talk a little bit about the relationship with the board? Because obviously that's an important construct in all of this. We on the council have certain, as we know, levels of responsibility, our own lane. I get the need for growing the pie so that there can be additional resources spent, but of course how they are spent is not dictated by this body. But could you talk a little bit about that relationship with the board and how do you think it could be improved or where you think things are working?
Well, one way it could be improved would be if they were full-time board members, because they're asked, we have a lot of criticism of the board members, but the truth of the matter is they're asked to do a full-time job with part-time money. And a district of our size and a budget of our size, it's really ridiculous in my view that we're expecting part-time people to oversee it. Having said that, they're elected to oversee it. And I know our members have been frustrated in the past with the Board of Education's willingness to just delegate and not be active overseers at times. And that's been a frustration. And we've been working on trying to have more one-on-one time with the board members. And getting our members into the board members' view, and so that they can hear, the individual, the down to, the on the ground problems that educators are facing, and I think that will really help. Because I think the Board of Education are all really, really good people who are committed and dedicated and passionate about helping kids. But I would like my elected Board of Education to be more take their role as overseers more strongly and not simply listening to the school district. But we are working on trying to build those relationships with this board and then with the new board that will get sworn in December.
Great.
I would say we recently had a meeting with the Board of Education, and I do appreciate their, once again, willingness to listen to our concerns. And whenever we have to bring something to them, I do feel like they listen. I really would like to see some more action on the things, the concerns that we bring to them. But once again, I do appreciate the fact that they are open, and I feel like even more so that they're starting to listen more, and they are taking things to the superintendent and asking questions when we bring things to their attention.
Yeah, and our meeting also was very productive this year, much more productive than it's been, I think, in the past years, and maybe that has to do with some of the increased transparency and some of the new culture that we're trying to introduce into the school system.
As I mentioned in my remarks, we have had the opportunity to sit down with the Board of Education earlier in the month, and the new superintendent with our various vice presidents who represent on our executive board and our leadership, and really relay the ground experiences that folks who are rolling up their sleeves in the trenches, the rank and file who are doing the work. And so it's a first step. Obviously. Nothing's going to get solved in a day, but I have to concur with what our colleagues on the table here said. Is a full-time, fully staffed board makes sense for the size of what we have here, and of course oversight of MCPS budget should be over the Board of Education. But again, as you pointed out, there's an election as well, which could also change the makeup of that board. So we'll see how everything shakes out next week.
Thank you. Yeah, we sure will. Last two comments, and they're just comments. And I've said this many times before, we are all completely on the same team. And while we disagree on various matters, and sometimes passionately disagree, which I completely respect, we are all going to potentially have to circle the wagons depending on what happens 2 weeks from now. And so we'll have to come even more together than we have before. Regardless of what happens, either to take advantage of some momentum and opportunities or to play some defense. So that's something that I think we're just not going to, unfortunately, be able to forget. But the last thing I'll say for now is that we are going to have to continue to look for creative solutions. I'm proud that we have been able to support, since I've been on this body, all of the negotiated contracts that you all have presented, because we know how important they are. But I would just urge all of you within those negotiations, and I've shared this with MCPS leadership as well, we defer to them for their expertise. One of the areas of too many to count that's been brought up by students, by parents, by staff, is the issue of safety. It's a core fundamental issue that I've heard from teachers, I've heard from administrators, I've heard from parents, I've heard from students, is not where it needs to be. And so as we look at negotiations, clearly one of the areas among many that needs to be enhanced is our safety and security team. The salary and compensation, the benefits package, the support that we provide these unbelievably important frontline staff members who are there to keep everyone safe. So that's not something we can do as a body. It has to be done through the negotiation process, but it's something we are all 11 of us are on the record of having talked about, and something that needs to be addressed. So as we continue these negotiations, I've just put a plug in for that, and we look forward to funding the contracts, and we will get there. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvarez. Thank you, Councilmember Mink. I'll just say, we also on this committee, and I think I can speak for my colleagues, but I'll certainly speak for myself, have been happy with the tone and approach of Dr. Taylor. We have Ms. McGuire, who's here, who's Chief of Staff over there, and many other MCPS folks that are in the room. I think that's a good thing. Not I think, it is a good thing, and I'm glad to hear that reflected from you all today. You can't start if people aren't listening to each other and they're not feeling like they have a good relationship and can move forward. Doesn't make the work any easier, but you would like to go in with some trust and a good relationship when you're doing hard things. So I'm really, really happy, and that has not always been the case. Since I've been on this committee 6 years, I would say most of that time that has not been the case. And so I'm hopeful for the opportunities and challenges we have to face, that's a good place to start. The other thing, this committee, I'm really proud that this session, we have not had a session like this where we've heard from the community, our union members. We're going to hear from our independent schools, which is another big part of our education ecosystem here. And so I commit that as long as I'm chair, we're gonna keep having these and have you back so that we can hear and get all aspects of what's going on and how we solve these challenges, because that's, obviously, a lot happens away from the table, but the public needs to be, this needs to happen in this setting too. And we'll continue to have our oversight hearings from our perspective of the budget. You know, we had over 50 hours, right, Michelle Whitaker, 20 meetings, so we're going to continue to do that on the ENC committee, and appreciate your participation. So thank you for being here, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you. All right. And last but definitely not least, we want to bring up our independent school leaders to round out our discussion here. And I got to you 5 minutes before I said I was going to, so. And hopefully this conversation was helpful for you too. So ask you to come down and introduce yourselves. Fill up all the seats. There we go, there's a seat on the end, yeah. It's longer than it looks. No problem. You can, what you can do is just hop up and back. No, yeah. So, yeah. Is that okay? Okay. Okay. Yeah. When that person's presenting, we can just hop out. Yeah. So maybe if we just start by introductions here. Press your button there. Yeah. Go ahead. I'll just go from in order here. Yeah.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. My name is Barbara Egan. I am the Associate Head of School at Holton Arms in Bethesda, Maryland.
Good morning. Jennifer Danish. I'm the Head of School at Grace Episcopal Day School, and I'm also on the board of the ASUW.
Good to see you.
Hi, I'm Amy McNamer. I'm the Executive Director at the Association for Independent Schools of Greater Washington, and we have, as you probably know, 78 schools in the DC area. 30 of them are in Montgomery County.
Morning. My name's Jim Neal. I'm the head of school at Landon School, which is a boys' school, about 700 students in Bethesda.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ellie Lichtash, and I'm the head of Alphabet Montessori School in Bethesda, Maryland.
Thank you.
I'm Marina Castro.
You're gonna have to come up and
just
come up.
There's a microphone you need to speak to.
Can you just sit there? Yeah, they won't be able to hear you if you don't. You can. Yeah, sure.
I'm Marina Castro, and I'm the head of school at the Nora School in downtown Silver Spring.
Awesome. And someone can actually sit there, so please. Oh, okay, got it. Okay. Got it.
Hi, I'm Jessica Palladino. I'm the head of school at the Woods Academy in Bethesda.
Nice to see you. Thank you for being here.
Got our final
Okay.
head here. Saved you a seat, Mitch.
It was a hard-fought seat. Just press your button there. In front of you. Introduce yourself. Yeah, thank you.
Mitchell Malkus. I'm the head of the Charles E. Smith Jewish Day School here in Rockville.
Good to see you. Thank you all for being here. Turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you so much. So I believe you received a quick executive summary of about 4 or 5 issues we would like to discuss with you here today. Because we have a few time constraints here with some of our panelists, what I'd like to ask is if Mitch and Ellie could address safety and security issues on campus specific to the Jewish day schools. So if we could start with that and then actually hopscotch over to a quick presentation or comments on zoning, because I know Jim Neal has to leave as well.
Absolutely.
Sorry, so we'll sort of
Whatever
just.
order works
Okay.
for you guys is fine.
All right, so Mitch, do you want to start off there?
So thank you for having us here today. So I think that you've read in the news that there's been a significant increase in anti-Semitic incidents in the United States nationally and even here in Montgomery County. The ADL says that this year there's been a 140% increase in anti-Semitic incidences and 138% when they look at K-12 schools. The county has recognized the threat to Jewish institutions and schools, but the magnitude is just so significant, and the financial impact is becoming a burden that we're no longer able to really handle. We're now we have a $30 million budget at our school, 850 students. We're a JK to 12 pluralistic school with 2 campuses. We're currently spending $1.9 million in operating costs yearly on security, mostly for personnel. We employ security service, but also off-duty Montgomery County officers who are armed guards at our schools. The county has a new grants program that started a couple of years ago, which really is wonderful. But what we're seeing is that there are more and more applicants, and then so the amount of money that we're receiving on a yearly basis has been reduced pretty significantly. The other thing that we're facing is just the increased costs of the officers. So the officers are at our school regularly from when school starts through the end of the activities, and we have a high school, so oftentimes till 8 or 9 in the evening. The hourly rates have been about $55 an hour, but they go up to $75 to $100, and that's what we're looking at for next year. So potential increase pretty significantly in terms of all of those things. So what I wanted to share is our thanks for what the county is trying to do, but to share the magnitude of the issues that we're facing and the increase both in the number of incidences that we're seeing and also in the costs.
Hi, I'd just like to add to that two things. One is that the incidents are real, and I faced one of them when I had an unauthorized entry into the building of people who threatened me directly and threatened my staff. You're Jewish, you get out of here. We want you out of this neighborhood. Whether they said, you're going to make all of us Jewish. This is a police case on it. There's a number to it. We have an FBI case because they also threatened my neighbor who tried to defend the school. So it's a real deal. It's happening. It's there. It's real. We do have a relationship with our police, and we are very grateful for that. That means they've increased the patrols around our school for 3 minutes instead of 6 minutes, so whenever we call them, they're there in 3 minutes. However, we do pay off-duty police officers, and I have to tell you, the parents do not feel safe to come in if there's no police officer in the morning. The real deal with the police officers is that now, as Jim said, the price is going up like more than 30%, and we have nowhere to bring that money from. We have to have them. For us, it's not like a privilege. It's a necessity to exist, and that's a back-breaking necessity for our schools.
Thank you for sharing. I know we have all talked a lot, and we are very proud of that grant program, again, which is, most communities don't have anything like that. But thank you for just underscoring the unfortunate reality that these threats are still happening, and it's there, and how it's impacting you. I know we have Captain Statinsky here. Thank you for being here, sir. We're very proud of our department and how they've interacted, but thank you for bringing that to us. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
Do you have any other questions for these two heads?
Yeah, let me ask my colleagues.
Okay.
You mentioned, I'll ask one, and then if my colleagues have one, and I know you all have to maybe leave. I'm assuming if you've documented the increases in incidents at your schools. Well, let me not assume. Have you? What has been the? I know you talked about the global numbers, and you talked about a very specific horrible example. But have you documented? And have you shared that with the increase in incidences on your schools or calls, or what does that look like for you?
Yes, we document that. We report to the authorities. We've been in touch with the Attorney Generals of Maryland State Department directly, just to make sure that everybody is aware of that situation. I haven't talked to my council yet. It was Andrew Friedson at the time, and now it's a new county council. But that is our reality every day. Like, if somebody drives by our school and there's a police officer and they slur at the parents who are standing there and go and say things to the parents, this is happening every day. We don't record that. But the very big incidents we do record. And they're happening almost every week.
So we do record all the incidents, and we report those to the police officers, and we have a really wonderful relationship with the officers because they're on our campus all the time. So we report those immediately and then submit them in writing when we need to.
Okay, so we'll follow up with Captain Statinsky just to get the actual. I see he's already texting. Get the numbers for that. Councilman Alvarez.
Thank you.
just start with this. We have a blended family. Some of my kids go to independent schools, and we're in the public school system as well. So I just really appreciate all of you, especially coming today, which on Halloween, which I know is a big day for all of you. So I know you want to quickly get back, and I love the orange. Well done. So I guess what you've shared is so sobering and so sad and such an indictment of where we are right now as a society, which has caused immeasurable stress and pain, which is impacting mental health and that of your staff, your parents, and most importantly, the children you all serve. So I just want to start from that place and acknowledging that and expressing my deepest sadness that we're in this place as a society. I would love to, and this is a follow-up for our staff, get an update on where the grant program is for safety and security, how much of that is going to schools, because in my mind, that should be a priority if it isn't already. And while I appreciate, sadly, this is extending to other community-based organizations that have very real and raw needs, I do think that we should be, to the degree to which we can, prioritizing organizations that serve children and youth, which of course includes our schools. So, and while I'd love to be able to grow the pie overall of our safety and security grants to meet the needs, we have to, see what we can do, but also prioritize within what we are already allocating. Second, of course, we're experiencing very challenging personnel issues within our police department. We are tremendously under-resourced and staffed in that area. We're having lots of recruitment and retention problems, which is compounding the issue. But I know that now under Chief Yamada and previously under Chief Jones, this has been a priority. We'll make sure that it continues to be, although I fully expect that it will. And to the degree to which we can have patrol officers there or just generally in the area, obviously that needs to remain a priority. But that's something we can follow up for with law enforcement as well. I just had those two comments. There's no easy solution here, but I just wanted to let you know you are absolutely heard, and we totally get it.
If I can just so that you know, our staff is diverse. Not everybody's Jewish. So we have non-Jewish population, and same goes to our children because we provide certain grants. And so it's not just that we're not asking for Jewish kids, we're asking for a specific targeted Jewish school that we know we are a target of that specific incident.
Thank you. Councilmember Mink, do you have anything on this?
Yeah, I agree with everything said by my colleagues on this front.
I'm thinking about the balance of the increasing needs with what we have in the security fund. If there's a need to have officers there or to have security there, all day, really, morning to night, which I think, if I'm understanding correctly, that sounds like that's unfortunately where we are. Does it make sense to be spending grant money on, or to be spending, not specify grant money, but does it make sense to be having, full-time positions that are, that are filling these roles as opposed to the hourly positions? I don't know if that kind of cost benefit has been run.
So thank you for the question. I can speak to that, which is that
You don't have to look that way. She can't see you.
you can't see me.
The
Okay.
cameras are here, so you can look.
Okay.
You can look there.
I appreciate it, though.
Okay. I wanted to look. So I think the way that we view this is that when we first decided to have armed security at the school, which was a decision we didn't take lightly, and for many, many years, we sort of didn't want to have that presence. We didn't want to have armed guards. It creates a certain environment in the school. It's actually turned out really well, and the officers are excellent, and we have a relationship with them, so it feels very comfortable. But the quality of the training that the off-duty officers have versus even the highest quality private security that we could have is significantly different, so we feel a lot more safe with the off-duty officers. The other thing is that for the most part, we're a school that there's a relationship with the police force, and that has created, I think, a longer-term relationship that supports the school security generally. So the police will walk the premises and will check out other things. And a number of years ago, there was a bomb threat at our school, and the police were able, because they knew our facility so well, to come right in and be able to determine whether it was legitimate or not. So I think that the quality of the service that we receive is significant. We haven't done a cost analysis to see if it could be less money if we were to have a full-time employee versus hourly employee.
Thank you.
We actually did the analysis. We're not using it full-time all the time. We're using it for the morning drop-off and for the afternoon pickup because that's where the public can see our children. Two things are here, just like my friend said. The security companies do not have the same training as our off-duty police officers. It can't be even compared, and we can't even start there. So if we want to have security, it has to be an off-duty police officer. They're high quality, they're incredible, they know what to look for. They need to create a relationship in the area, they need to know what to look in the area, who's coming repeatedly again and again, who's talking to them again and again. That's part of the security measures that they provide us. So for us, it's not the money of a full-time versus part-time. It's who is there on the property to protect.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Reddick. Thank you all for raising that. So who did you want to go to next?
Yes, so we have a few other comments about general safety and security at schools, but I would like to switch over briefly, if I can, to zoning, because I know Jim Neal's got to be out of here by noon, right? And I don't know how much time we have today. I can be here all day.
Yeah, we're gonna stop by 12:30, but
okay.
We need about 10 minutes probably, or 5 minutes to 5 to 10 minutes to do these special appropriations. But you're fine.
Okay.
So we made you wait. I'm happy to stay here. Hopefully, if we have to, at least till 12:30. Yeah.
Okay, so if you don't mind, we'll just switch quickly over to zoning, and then we can go back to.
I'm on the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee, which has zoning authority. So
Okay, so.
Great.
You got a captive audience.
Moving from something as significant as safety and security of children to.
Oh, please hit your button there.
I feel a little funny moving from something as significant as safety and security to zoning and permitting, but it is a real thing. So indulge me if I share a little bit on our experience with that. We have at Landon significant experience in recent years because we've done a major reconstituting of the campus. We've gone through a special exception process for an overall master plan that's involved changing roads, building buildings, moving buildings, redoing buildings. So it's been a pretty major undertaking. So I feel like I have a pretty good sense of it right now. And I guess I just jotted down 3 things without getting into nitty-gritty on it. The first is just partnership, and I'm not asking in anything I say for more resources. So there's good news for you all, but maybe a way for the schools to save resources by making the process less burdensome. So the first is some sort of creation of a sense of partnership between schools and zoning and permitting authorities. I see the energies being sometimes adversarial with the independent schools, and I'm speaking just from my experience as an independent school, as opposed to recognizing there's an opportunity to enhance a school that, in fact, benefits the public schools because we take, about half of our boys are Montgomery County residents, so that's 350 boys who are not having to burden the public school system. So there is this sort of symbiotic kind of nature to it. I remember the other day we were talking to a permitter and we're putting in 50 new trees in an area. And he just looked at me, and not because we have to, because he said, why isn't it 80? Well, I'm like, well, trees are $2,000 a pop. If you have 60,000, it wasn't this, hey, that's good news. It was do more, do more, do more. So so a general appreciation for the institutions in a sense of partnership and that we're all kind of trying to do the same thing and make our educational institutions better was one. The second piece is some degree of coherence and consistency. We've had times when the responses of permitters has been nothing short of capricious or whimsical, I would say. One we're dealing with right now has to do with just a railing. A metal railing by a building that was approved, and this one permitter came and said, no, I'm not going to approve it, and you got to spend an extra $3,000 to change a 4-foot piece of railing. That's money that could have gone to professional development, it could have gone to tuition, financial assistance, and that's just not a good use of resources for something that's approved. I've seen these exact railings all over the county. So that's one small one. Overall, in our projects in recent years, it's led to hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional costs. Another example of being permitted to do something and then about to start, and an individual person comes in and says, no, you can't start, you need to do this one little thing, which then gets unraveled, but we've lost 6 weeks, and actually it cost us over 6 figures to deal with that issue that ended up being removed. And that's the third. I think any regulation, I always talk about administrative burden and costs, it's real here for a nonprofit and independent school that has to go through a process that involves zoning board, involves park and planning, it involves in our case, a forest conservancy, involves state highways, involved local transportation. We had to do a traffic model, which maybe is different for a commercial entity building a building and needs to do all that stuff. But as a school, not to mention neighbor outreach, and we're blessed to have really good neighbor relations in general. If there were some way, especially perhaps with nonprofits, and I'm speaking from an independent school perspective, to recognize we are different from some, insert giant construction company X here who's building a for-profit, apartment building or something. We're different. We're trying to create a better setting for children to learn in. And so for me, perhaps that's a solution. Is there some way of looking at a nonprofit entity differently so that the burden can be lessened a little bit? I mean, I could tell you some crazy stories we have. I won't, that we've gone through in this process. We did learn that we owned half of Wilson Lane at one point. And don't worry, we deeded it over to the county in exchange for not having to put in a bike lane on our campus. But some of that kind of stuff is just silly to me. And that, we're all in this together. We've been there about 100 years. We're not going anywhere. We want to be good neighbors, good partners. And if this process were a little less burdensome, I think it would be helpful. And then I guess the last point is making sure that the independent and the public schools are treated sort of on a level playing field in terms of zoning. That bike lane thing I mentioned, Pile, just down the road from us, went through a big renovation project. They didn't have this burden of putting in a bike lane. Somehow we got tasked with putting in a bike lane. It got unraveled through major expense and legal engagement. But why the different playing field? That's an example of something that, could be a way of saving costs for the independent schools without burdening county budgets. So those are just some thoughts I have. I haven't gone through this in the recent years.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that perspective. You should feel comforted with the fact to know that you're not the only entity that complains about.
Oh, I'm sure.
how our permitting and zoning works with them. But that being said, I agree with I think your premise that there are some unique things that have related to the work you're doing. It would make sense, and I'm going to ask as a follow-up that maybe we ask our Department of Permitting Services and Park and Planning as a start to meet with you all, your entity, to talk through, and maybe you can aggregate some. I've worked with some of you individually. I'm looking at Grace Piswell here and on solving certain issues or speeding things up, but there could be a set of, I think there would be benefit in having a meeting to talk about some common issues, some specific examples, and then having that maybe be used as an opportunity for resetting and improving the relationship, given your mission.
Yeah.
So
I would certainly welcome that. I mean, we're on the tail end of our sort of exercise, but we'll be doing things over the years.
Yeah, and it'll help others.
But it'll help everybody.
Yeah.
And we're not bad guys.
We know that. We know that for sure. Appreciate you bringing that up. Colleagues, anything on that in particular? Go ahead, Councilmember Alvarado.
No, I think, so this is sadly, regardless of the industry or the sector, we hear similar stories and challenges, which we know can be extremely frustrating. I would say contacting your district council members and forging strong relationships with them can sometimes help facilitate conversations with planning and open doors. And so I would urge all of you to, if you haven't already, forge those relationships, because sometimes our offices are navigators. Sometimes we can help expedite a phone call being returned. We can't necessarily change the outcome, but we can help add to the urgency and make sure people understand why these particular projects are important. So we are sadly sometimes a really big bureaucracy, but trust is also important. So having relationships with planning staff and, some of the planning staff have connections directly to independent schools. So I think it's important to forge those relationships at all levels of government.
And we've been working hard with permitting, DPS and planning, the regulatory bodies to be more to have them be more consistent. I know that's something we hear a lot. It's
I mean, that's one that doesn't have a cost.
Yeah, exactly.
Could have a real benefit.
The rule is the rule is the rule, right? Councilmember Mink, do you have anything on this?
I mean, I'll just say that, yes, we hear this from everybody.
In all sectors, it really is a problem that needs to be remedied, where we've got just multiple, inspectors, permitters coming in and getting different messages from them at different times, causing undue expense. Where really this process should feel like, to your point, like a partnership. Like the county is helping people to get things done, in the nonprofit sector, but also, in the business sector as well. So, to Councilmember Alvarez's point, it should not be like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and like you need an advocate to come in and help move through county services. However, right now that is the reality. So as we work on the systemic issues, and I think that the meeting that Chair Joanna suggests is a great idea. We're glad to be your partners and your advocates in the process.
Well, I just want to say thank you. I think there is a real opportunity in that, and we want to follow the rules. I mean, it's not like we're trying to sneak away. We just want to do it in a way that's a little more efficient.
Absolutely, yeah. And as the chair of the Education Committee, as a member of Planning, Housing, and Parks, I will, if it works, I'll try to come to that meeting once we'll actually make it happen, and I'll emphasize that this is important, and hopefully that will help start the good working relationship. So thank you for raising that.
I apologize for leaving. We actually have the pumpkin races today, which is our 3rd and 4th graders Super Bowl.
Don't want to miss that.
If I miss the pumpkin races, I'll hear about it.
Just send us a picture.
Okay. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
Any other comments on zoning from our people here before we move into childcare?
I would be happy to speak on that. So I'm here representing Holton Arms School, actually Landon School's sister school, just a couple miles away. We're at the very beginning of our exploration of what we might reconsider with our current zoning restrictions. And I think one of the things that has been a revelation for our own community is how restrictive some of those restrictions are. So when it comes
restrictiveness of the restrictions.
Exactly. So I think one other thing I want to advocate for is, as independent schools, as nonprofits, 501c3s, we still do remain committed to our public purpose. And the use of our resources to benefit the public is something that I think has mutual beneficial elements that I hope can be part of the conversation as well. So for us right now, whenever we want to consider, somebody might come and say, we'd love to have an arts performance and we'd love to open it up to the community and have a number of schools join us. We can't do that right now with our restrictions. We would love to extend our athletic camps and have, different leagues across the county who don't have access to the kinds of fields that we have. We would love to be able to welcome them to our campus. Currently, we can't do that. We would love to be able to expand our incredibly popular Creative Summer Camp and have more kids to be able to be a part of that, but there are restrictions on who we can even prioritize to attend those camps, not to mention the number of folks that we can have as part of those camps. And then we have different neighborhood groups, as we all do, that we work alongside, and whether it was an ability to host a meeting on our campus or to facilitate some sort of community engagement, we can't do that. And so I think, just to build on some of the points that Jim made, I just want to say that part of what we are seeking as well through an improved relationship with all of our different zoning authorities and permitting structures is that we're really trying to enhance our public impact and what that benefit can look like to our surrounding communities. So that's the one piece I just wanted to add.
I really, really appreciate you bringing that up. and is not only what you can do for yourself and your community, but what you can do for the larger community and how some of these things are getting in the way of that. And I think, the CUP, Community Use for Public Facilities, let's add them to this meeting. And I think that's in this, add this topic of like, it's not just, it's a two-way street here. Like, you want to bring people in, you are a part of the community. Many of your students live in the community, their families. So I really appreciate you lifting that up. Yeah, you want to say something?
Yeah, I am too. And I will, all of your respective schools, and again, I can speak about this in the first person, I'm familiar with this, have your own version of various scholarship programs and opportunities to ensure that students who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford to attend independent schools have the access and ability to do so, I think. And that's not done, we want to raise all boats. We want to ensure the strongest possible public school infrastructure while also acknowledging for a number of families, independent schools, for whatever reason, are an option that they would prefer. And again, it's not an either or, it's both and. So, but I do think I'd love to follow up with you all on this because I think there are some other great opportunities. One of them is many of your schools have spectacular synthetic turf fields. And our Community Use for Public Facilities has recently had to adjust their policy because the demand has grown so high for the few fields that we have that they've had to adjust their waiting lists because they're just acknowledging that sadly there are programs that are never going to get on these fields. That's something we have to address as a community. There was a very good study by the Office of Legislative Oversight on this. But in the meantime, I think there may be an opportunity for us to be more deliberate and thoughtful in how to open up access because we want to get kids playing. Like that's got to be a priority. But that's one of many examples. You also have tremendous alumni. You also have incredible networks, and I know there's an intentionality in having a number of your students volunteer through various nonprofit organizations, through service projects, but you all have a little bit more flexibility in your curriculums to be able to allow students during the day to experience different options and opportunities than kids in our public school system may have. And so I'd love to create more time and space for there to be partnerships and helping address the needs of our community as a whole. So that would be a really interesting work group to talk through what that might look like. And for now, an analogy I want to give, during COVID, the county extensively funds our primary health clinics. But what we learned during COVID and what we sort of knew inherently was our public health infrastructure. If we're really going to talk about this effectively, we have to talk about our for-profit health institutions in addition to our nonprofit health institutions. And you're all nonprofits. I know it's an apples and oranges. But COVID forced us to work more cohesively and look at the entire landscape of public health. And I think we should be doing something similar with education because many of the problems that our kids are facing through our public school system are the same challenges that our kids in independent schools are facing too. And I think we each have solutions and can support each other even more than we already are.
That's why you're here.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're glad. Another first for the committee in my knowledge. Just not to toot our own horn, but I will. Councilmember Mink, did you have anything? No. Okay. Great. Next topic.
Sorry, we're gonna move around a little
right.
here because I know the captain actually has to leave, and I just want to make sure he's here for part of this conversation. So I think another primary concern in our schools overall is just safety and security, especially in the wake of gun violence on school campuses across the country, and with the upcoming elections, specifically in this area of the country. I think there's great concern that there could be some civil unrest. So we are very much willing to work with the captain and his team and local law enforcement to make sure we at least have communication protocols in place. And let me just tell you what we have been able to do in the District of Columbia, because maybe there is something similar we could work out with the county. So the District of Columbia has a program called the RAVE Communications Network. So every public school in DC has a panic button on on a phone of leadership, whoever wants it. So that allows the leadership team to call 911 if there's an incident in school. Last year, the independent schools were invited to join that contract at no charge so that any independent school could, again, get access to 911 services immediately through the push of a button. Now we are in conversations with DC to have an incoming alert to our schools so that if there's a situation within a 2-block radius, they will have notification that they should not dismiss their students or they should shelter in place. I don't know.
What currently happens?
Nothing. Unfortunately, yeah. So anyway, I would love to know if there's a like solution here in the county. I was saying nothing in DC. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, no, I'm
here.
sure we do. I know we have some sort of protocol,
Okay.
but I just want to stop you. And I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah. So I was just saying, in DC, I think what we're going to be able to accomplish is this two-block situational awareness. The current situation in DC is our schools find out from their parents that other public schools have gone into lockdown that are a block away, and they don't know otherwise.
I don't think we're doing that. I hope not, but let's.
No, Cap Jordan Stensky, Montgomery County Police. Sorry. Thanks for having me. To answer your question, currently, within our Montgomery County Public Schools, we have a system, pretty robust communication system back and forth. But yeah, you're correct. Within our independent schools, we do not, at least between the police department directly. What we do have, though, is Director Hodgson out of OEMHS.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I always mess up that acronym.
I think was supposed to be here. Is he here? We have a representative. Okay.
Oh, okay. They do have the reverse 911, where when we do have situations, they're supposed to trigger into a certain radius. That's supposed to be instigated by whoever, whether it be our emergency communications center or an officer on the scene, or even the fire department, depending on how the situation unfolds. It's not always utilized, I'll be honest, only because in the grand scheme of things, the emergent nature of what's happening, it usually takes hold, and our other processes are pretty succinct. One of the independent schools, and pardon me, I can't remember, did approach me about, it wasn't called RAVE, but it was something else, referenced this, and I put them together with our emergency communications director, Cass Olney, last year to figure out how to do exactly what you're talking about. There were some technological issues because we're not as technologically robust as a government entity, is not always, as some of our independent partners. So there were some misfires there, and it's not just internet. There's something else to it which I can't speak to. I don't know what it is. But yes, we can. Our primary tenet with the Community Engagement Division and the SRO program really has always been the public schools, and that's the state mandate. There are certain facets that do cover the independent schools when it comes to reporting features as far as arrests and things along those lines. The emergency communications, you guys fall under the same heading as a business. So there is not a special carve-out presently for that. My suggestion, and I'm speaking on for this based on this conversation, would be to have some sort of a meeting outside of this, obviously, with your folks, the folks here, or whoever you all designate, emergency management, the police department, our communication center, and fire, and kind of work through this and see what the best avenue is. I don't know, encumbering a new alert system for us financially, especially when I have to cut 3.3% out of our budget, I'm not sure we'll be able to do that. But taking what we already have and blending it in with what you guys have, I don't see why we can't. I don't know enough about the technology, so I apologize.
No, I appreciate that. Another great recommendation. Let's do that as soon as possible. I mean, yeah, we can help facilitate, bring people together, send a letter. But yeah, go. Are you trying to chime in? Go ahead. Thank you, Captain Stensky.
So I just wanted to share, so I had the privilege of being an administrator in MCPS for 8 years. And so this is my second year in independent schools. And so I was able to really get a lot of training, fortunately or unfortunately, around school safety. So that really enabled when I came to my school to bring a lot of what MCPS does, thank you, into the Woods Academy. But now I feel 2 years behind because I don't know what's going on. So I want to chime in, and I'd love to be a part of whatever work group because I love a good work group. But I feel like being part of a work group that really, like, we meet regularly to hear what are the best practices and really just relationship building. I think that that's important because we do feel kind of out there when we're doing lockdown and shelter drills because it's best practice. But, you know, that idea of, yes, I can call and get someone out, but having that be a bit more cohesive for us and really have someone, I mean, At Rolling Terrace, I had an officer who came by and who I really knew well. So I feel like that would be a real benefit to all of us to have a regular cadence of meetings where we kind of touch base and then have those standard operating procedures. Because again, I took over and it was a different structures were in place. So I think that just that communication would be really, really helpful.
I appreciate that. Again, so glad so we've got at least 2 meetings. We've got that are separate and distinct, but equally important in that about the, land use zoning and also community use. Because again, that's why you're here, because we have 70 schools, 30 in Montgomery County. I always see the cars that have an independent school sticker, a public school sticker, and it's like most, Councilman Alvarez mentioned this, my family was in this boat for most of, now I'm all for an MCPS, but I'm sure I will soon probably be back to a hybrid model, and when I get at a high schooler going next year, so it's really incumbent our residents don't distinguish. You're a perfect example as an administrator. We are uniquely blessed to have a robust public school system and a robust independent system where there's a lot of overlap, but I don't think the communication, the coordination, the safety in this case, we're not as linked up as we need to be. So we'll have the safety meeting that was suggested with the partners, and then a separate one on the kind of community benefit and public land use and zoning and permitting issues. So that's 2 good things that have at least come out of this right now. Captain Stinsky, anything else?
No, unless anyone else has anything for me, I'm good.
You are dismissed. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Really appreciate you being here. What's next? Anything else?
I feel like it's rapid fire.
Yeah, I love it.
We'll
We're solving
keep
things.
moving.
That's what happens when you bring heads of schools together.
So I think we'd like to turn now to the blueprint for public-private partnerships in Maryland, which is something that we are excited about learning more about. I know that Ellie has had experience with it herself, so she would like to say a few remarks about it. And that, again, is for universal pre-K in the county.
Yes.
Okay, so we really appreciate the Universal Pre-K. I think it's a fabulous program that helps under poverty line parents to access private independent schools. That's the key. 3 and 4-year-olds, that's the age group that we're talking about. Here are the problems. The eligibility for a school, okay, depends on the credentialing of the teachers. There's a different credentialing system in the public school system versus the independent schools. We recruit in the workforce anybody who has a BA, a valuable BA, and we train them. This is not acceptable on the MSDE, and that has to be changed because we do have a serious workforce issue. So that's one thing we had to advocate for, and we ask your help in this matter. The second element is the cost, and the cost hasn't changed from $13,500 in the last 5 years. I have to say that. It costs a public school to hold a student in the public school over $20,000. When you talk about preschool, the ratios are different. Public school is 1 to 15. A ratio for 1 to 3 is 1 to 6 or 1 to 10. I have to add staff members. My cost starts at $25,000, let alone if the child has IEP. So then I'm at the $40,000 zone, and I'm getting $13,000. There's such a disparity in the amounts that we ask you to advocate so that we can actually continue that effort. I have a meeting right now at 12:30 with a large donor just to be able to gap the difference of the price per each student. That's why I'm meeting with that donor. The second thing, I wanted to thank the county for creating the EquiCare. EquiCare takes care of the children between 0 to 3, okay? And that doesn't put a limit amount. It actually took the cost that we presented, and it's fabulous. Where does it fall short? A child that turns 3, let's say I took a child who's 2-year-old, he falls into EquiCare, and the EquiCare gives us the money to take him. But if he turns 3 in April, no more money. But that child cannot go to pre-K because pre-K starts he has to be 3 on September 1st the year before. There's a gap there that we ask the county to fix, okay? It's in your hands to talk to the EquiCare people and help us to fix those who turn 3 mid-year. The next thing I'm gonna ask, if that ever possible, that EquiCare goes beyond 3. into the 4-year-old, because this way you can help us with the funding for the pre-K grants. There's not many of us who provide pre-K grants, not many of us who can provide that because of the shortage of the workforce and the shortage of the financing. So EquiCare can solve that problem in that respect.
Thank you for bringing that up. We actually have a joint Education Culture HHS meeting on early care and education on November 7th, where we're going to be talking about cost of care studies that have just come up and other things. So we'll make sure we take this information and loop it into that process, and really appreciate what you're providing. We constantly hear about how that subsidy is not enough for anybody, so really appreciate you lifting that up. Okay, I want to make sure, we haven't heard from Jennifer Danish yet, so I want to, I have to hear from her, so I want to make sure.
She's next, unless there are any questions on
Any
early
questions on that, colleagues?
childhood.
have to leave for my...
You are, don't miss that donor meeting. Yeah, go, you go. Okay, so let's keep going.
Okay, so I think what Jennifer would like to address is the green energy standards.
Yep. Good morning again. Thank you again for making this possible. It feels like a really important inroad for our continued work together, and we appreciate your leadership and support. So Jessica and I are both in closed schools, and as you know, Grace had a big transaction with the county, and we're really grateful to be leasing the property that we're in now, the former Larchmont Elementary School. It is an aging building, and we're doing a lot of the work to keep it up, which I know is a part of the great lease arrangement that we have with the county, as does the Woods Academy. Grace's is one of a few private schools that is a green school of Maryland, and we're really committed to sustainability. We are trying to maintain and upkeep the building in sustainable and green ways. What we're finding is that it's just beyond the capabilities that we have. It could be a conflict of interest. My husband sits on the Green Bank board, and he keeps telling me, like, that's the solution, and I hear that that's a wonderful entity and great initiative, but Grace really isn't in a position to borrow millions of dollars either. Like, that's a really tricky place for us to get to as well. So what I'm trying to bring forward is that I think all of our schools I don't want to replace the 7 or 8 HVACs that I have that are gas with gas. I want those to be heat pumps, but I have to work with PEPCO, and it's a major undertaking, master plan, that's millions of dollars, I think. And I know that the county is actually going to require that our buildings get to that place. And I actually heard the county executive sort of talking about at a recycling event where Grace won an award for its green work, that the county has set these really broad and courageous standards for, zero emissions, which we support wholeheartedly. But what I also heard him say was that he knows that there's not really a plan financially to make that possible for, independent schools, nonprofits that just don't have the capacity to dip into operating to make that possible. So I feel a little bit where I find myself is a little bit stuck. I've been trying to bring in like a task force with parents who have some expertise in this realm. I know there's federal infrastructure money, but again, like, it doesn't seem like there's kind of a think tank or something that's kind of helping us find the way forward to make our schools be sustainable as part of this broad, expansive vision that the county has, but also because it is the right thing and we want to participate. So I'm just looking for the next steps. Thank you.
Appreciate you raising that. It's something we hear from a lot of from businesses, from others, multifamily, developers, and how to make the transition. It's going to require a massive amount of resources from somewhere, right? And it's going to obviously be a combination effort, right? It's not all going to come from the public or all come from the nonprofit or the private entities. But you bring up a really good point. I know in reading the packet, there was some discussion of, like, could you all be exempt or given more time? Certain part, as you know, in the BEPS the building performance, there were certain timelines that were tried to incorporate that, but again, you still need a plan to do it and over time. So we're not going to solve that here today, but it's a good issue to bring to our attention, because as those timelines are approaching, we have to figure out, how we're going to meet them. I don't know if colleagues have anything on this one. gave Councilmember Alvarez.
I really appreciate you raising this. We're, of course, in deliberations as we speak about BEPS, so I think this is helpful feedback to share with the committee, and I know Chair Glass is thoughtfully, methodically trying to go through this and dot the i's, cross the t's, make sure nothing falls through the cracks. This is an important element to that. And I would add, this is the second conversation I've had in the last 6 months, or 6 weeks, excuse me, about the Green Bank being this incredible resource, because it is. But we may have to look at some of the policies to make it easier for them to be able to support projects like this, which are, a slightly different construct than how we originally envisioned the bank to work. And now that it's been up and running, it's been a huge success. I think sometimes they feel a little hamstrung about what they can and can't support. And so that's a second component I'd love to look into as well, Kristen. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Mick, you're good? All right.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just note that it's important that we are hearing from all the different stakeholders. Everybody's got
unique needs, even within these groups of stakeholders, individual buildings have unique needs as well. So really appreciate you raising that. We do need to make sure that we have pathways for everybody to be able to handle, what they're being asked to do. So this will certainly be incorporated into the conversation. Appreciate it.
Especially folks who are winning green awards and want to do the right thing.
Absolutely.
Like that you should have a way to do the right thing that doesn't bankrupt you, right? So just want to say that out loud because we agree with you. Is that the last issue?
So the last issue will not surprise anybody, and is certainly not unique to our schools, but it is the cost of housing in the county and as it affects our faculty and staff and our school's ability to attract and retain teachers and other staff members. We're all familiar with this issue. We have had a couple of good meetings with the MPDU staff about that program. I think one of the issues there is that the cap of how much income a family can make to afford those opportunities is pretty low, so it doesn't work for a lot of our teachers. It might work for single teachers or teachers without a family, but once you get a couple of married kids, whoever else is living in there, it becomes unaffordable. And we also are aware that Council Member Friedson introduced a bill that would allow for some building on church properties, I believe, that was considered maybe an option for affordable housing in the community. We weren't able to support that endeavor because we understood that those housing units would need to be open to all members of the public. And for safety and security reasons, that's not something that we could undertake on our school campuses, to have individuals coming in and out of housing who were not a member of the community. So just wanted to put those two pieces of information in front of you and to let you know that we would be very interested in any other solutions for housing, affordable housing in the county.
Big issue, top probably 2 issue that we talk about all the time. How do we make sure folks can afford to live here? And we're constantly looking for different solutions. Where, obviously we passed rent stabilization for our 40% of folks who rent, many of whom are educators. Obviously, we've passed tax credits for public safety officers to be able to purchase homes. It's something that we need state authority to be able to extend that to educators and others, which we believe we should. I would be personally in favor of that being all educators, not just public school educators. For example, so there's some work that maybe we can work on that together with our partners in Annapolis, and then giving us the authority to extend that tax credit to those educators, which is what we did for public safety. Obviously there's down payment assistance, there's programs we have around that. There's never enough. Closing cost assistance. We also have the MPD program, but it's oversubscribed, and we often hear issues about the threshold. So there's a lot that we need to do. We need to build more housing. We need to protect the current housing, and certainly need to work on cost. Interesting. I wanted to make sure I heard you, because it sounded like maybe you would be open, and I think everyone on this committee, actually, I think the whole council supported that bill to encourage houses of worship to build housing, because you often have land. Are you saying that you would look to take advantage of that, some of your members, if they could be more, they wouldn't have to be open to everybody. That's what you're saying, and be more for your staff and community. Yeah, I think that's something to explore. Again, housing is housing. If there are met people that live here and it's going to take something off the system, I think that's somewhat beneficial to the whole system. So that's something to maybe come back to as an idea. So appreciate you mentioning that. Either one of my colleagues on this?
I would also encourage you guys, so we're in the throes of a deliberation over attainable housing, which we will get through, and we will find a sweet spot that I think is reasonable and thoughtful, as we often do through the legislative process on the council. But I think it's important for you all to lend your voices when there's an opportunity to testify on issues such as this, whether it's public safety issues, whether it's housing issues, because of the 30 schools, you magnify that by your staff and personnel. I mean, we're talking about thousands of people, many of which who are residents of Montgomery County, and that should be, something that I think would be helpful. And also, I'll say, educating your all's communities about these issues, because sometimes the pushback that we get come from these communities, candidly. And so I think, meeting your all's boards and alumni and networks and saying, we've got teachers and staff too that we want to be able to have live here, I think is a overdue conversation, and one that I think would be really helpful for all of us. But thank you all. And this is a totally random thought, but it was triggered earlier, composting. So we're trying to get our public school system, but it's like moving, a massive ship. But this is an area among many where you all could potentially lead, and show us, to educate your students and your families and staff. It's often our educators that bring these options and opportunities to light, and students get really passionate about this. So I'd encourage you all to look into that. Random, but.
There you go. There you go. Well, thank you all for being here. We'll do this again, obviously, and I think it was very productive and informative, and also just collaborative. And we look forward to continuing to work with you and all your members. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting us, and we'd be happy to come back anytime. So thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to quickly move to our last two items. Thank you to the MCPS staff who have been patiently waiting for these special appropriations. We have two special appropriations that we're going to consider. One, supplemental appropriation 2524. I'll turn it over to council staff to tee up the item.
Thank you, Chair Joando. Supplemental appropriation 2524 is in the amount of $367,500 for the purpose of improving adolescent health and well-being through a federal grant. And this funding will provide programming to foster healthy behaviors and to prevent and buffer the impact of adverse experiences. It will also be used to support MCPS elementary and secondary health curriculums, ongoing professional learning, data collection, the establishment of partnerships, and outreach initiatives. The data that is collected is privatized and will help to assess the need to improve adolescent health on the school system, to track behaviors and experiences over time, and to understand the impact of policies and programs MCPS is implementing. And with that, we do have several representatives from MCPS. Thank you for attending, who can answer any questions about this grant.
All right. Anything to add? You want to just take yes for an answer? Okay. So if go ahead, Councilman.
I'd like to move approval of this grant.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor of the well-being grant moving forward, raise your hand. There you go. We took a vote for you. We don't even always do that. So that's approved. The next one? Or move to the full council then? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. And the second supplemental appropriation we have today is number 2525 in the amount of $500,000 for the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant. And this will help fund MCPS's first REACH Hub outdoor classrooms, which will transform school grounds into living schoolyards that bolster local ecological systems and provide hands-on learning resources. This grant will also support MCPS in meeting their sustainability policies and watershed goals. So there's some multi-purpose there, which is great. I did just want to note also that this grant, kind of the use of it, there will be a 6-month design process that's very collaborative between the community and the school and the families within MCPS. That sounds like it will have multiple opportunities for check-in and will be very open. Student activities are anticipated to begin within a year of the grant being awarded.
Thank you very much. I think without objection, we'll approve this one. And just with the request, and I'm sure my colleagues will agree, I want to come and see this in action when it's ready. So just to MCPS, probably be a year from now, but it sounds like a really cool opportunity for our students. All right, so I think that is all we have for today. And this is a really robust discussion, really appreciate it. And with that, we are adjourned.